Okay, let's start over. That's embarrassing. But anyway, welcome to another episode of Dead Reckoning. This is episode 4. And what is a dead reckoning? Well, a dead reckoning is a nautical term for estimating your location in space and time. And the way that you make a dead reckoning is you take your last known location, you take your heading, your speed, and the time which you've been moving, and you look at the chart and you take a measurement, and that's how you estimate where you are in space time. There's a couple other ways you can do it. If you're by land, you can make estimations and fix it, but that's more of like a fix that really tells you exactly where you're at. A dead reckoning is an estimation, but if you use a GPS, that's considered a fix. So, why is this show called Dead Reckoning? Well, because we explore different ideas and see what is going on, what is the information, and see if we can come to some sort of estimation about where we actually are in the world, in space time, in regards to said event. So, can you guys hear me on YouTube now? Just let me know in the chat. I'm pretty sure it's coming through, but um so today, and guys, on Instagram, on YouTube, I have graphics and stuff on the screen. So it cuts off and the sound is cutting in and out. What is going on now? Mic check, mic check, mic check. If I go back here, okay, there's sound on this angle, but if I, okay, now it's back. This is not going to go well if the sound's going to be cutting in and out. Okay, I got the chat right here so I can see it, but um, okay, so Charlie Kirk. This is one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of Charlie Kirk. He's real pals with this guy, JD Vance. Not a fan of JD Vance. And he also is like constantly glazing Trump. I am not the biggest fan of Trump either. And this is where it's fun to talk about politics because whenever I talk about politics with people, a lot of people think I'm super pro Trump, and then I talk to Trump people, and they're like, "Why do you hate Trump?" And I'm like, "I don't like any of them. I am like anti-politician." Um, and because of that, it makes for good times because I can ruffle everybody's feathers. But Charlie obviously is a right wing commentator, and he was doing a rally in Utah, and he was shot in the neck and died. Now, if you were following it as it was happening, then you would have noticed a few interesting things about how immediately there was a political spin on what was happening, and there was a agenda being pushed. That agenda that was being pushed as soon as Charlie got shot was what I am referring to as a civil war agenda, where people on the right were saying like enough is enough. We can't be letting these types of things happen. We need to do something about it. And then other people were straight up calling for civil war. And I've seen it by lots of different people. Some people whose takes I think are decent at times, and then other people who um, are kind of suckers like that. But what they did was within the first 30 minutes of Charlie getting shot is they released a photo of a guy who is now cleared as a suspect. He's no longer a suspect in the shooting, and they were like they didn't dox him with his address, but they said his full name, and they said that he was a registered Democrat. So everybody on the right wing side was saying, "Oh, these crazy liberals, they can't handle somebody speaking truth and talking about freedom of speech and gun control, all that kind of stuff." And so these crazy liberals shot Charlie. Well, within an hour or 2 hours, that guy was cleared of being a suspect. And then another guy was presented as a suspect. And this is actually where the great FBI director, Kash Patel, not a fan, he tweeted here, "The subject of the horrific shooting that took the life of Charlie Kirk is now in custody. Thank you for the local and state authorities in Utah for your partnership with the FBI." And then, an hour later, he says, "Well, actually, psych, that guy has been cleared. He's not actually the guy that shot Charlie." And if we look at the news today, this is CNN, 6 a.m., September 11th. By the way, happy 9/11. Never again. No. Never forget. Never forget is 9/11. Never again is something else. Never forget 9/11. What's crazy, I'm like an old man now. I remember where I was on 9/11. I was in kindergarten. Well, I wasn't in the classroom yet. But anyway, back to Charlie. We can see that the manhunt is still underway. They haven't found the shooter for who killed Charlie Kirk. And they say is still at large, fired once from a nearby rooftop targeted attack. Now, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I saw the footage, which I don't recommend you watching, but whenever I saw the footage of Charlie, it was like immediate in my mind that was a professional hit. I mean, it was a good shot. It was from far away, and it's not like somebody ran up with a handgun and got him. It was like clearly a well-placed shot. Got him right in the jugular. And MSNBC, or I don't remember which one, but they were everybody was covering it. It was all over the news yesterday, which, side tangent, yesterday Israel also bombed 4 different countries, I believe. We'd have to look that up specifically, but it was either yesterday or the past couple days, like Qatar, Tunisia, and a couple others. Didn't see any of that in the news. It was all Charlie, which, fair enough. I mean, like a dude getting shot in the neck at a rally is a pretty big deal and deserves news coverage. But MSNBC, I think it was, they covered it and they were saying, we don't know what happened. There's no confirmed idea of what happened. Like, we don't know if it was one of his supporters that fired off their guns in celebration, which is absolutely insane to frame it like that, considering, one, he's at a college campus. He's at a college campus in Utah. He's not at a rally in the middle of Texas in an open field with like cowboys and like it's a campus in Utah. So just that framing is insane, because if you saw the footage, like it was a hit. It wasn't a supporter firing off their gun in celebration. So there was that spin that was put on it by the left wing, where they're going like, well, maybe it was one of his crazy right-wing gun nut supporters. And then the right wing was saying, well, it's Democrat. This is, we need to go to civil war, all that type of stuff. I saw a video by Mr. Jones, Alex Jones, earlier today that I think it was posted yesterday, but he was saying the same thing. Enough is enough, and we need to blah, 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 blah. And that to me is totally unhelpful to the situation. And if it is an operation, as in a psychological operation of what happened with Charlie, then that operation is to sow discord and civil unrest at minimum. And then other people are saying it's gun control. Other people say to distract from things, to silence them, whatever. Like, everybody has their opinions about it. But the idea that him getting shot means we should go to civil war is insane. Now, I haven't followed Charlie for like ever. This is actually the first day I've ever looked at his Twitter account, and he's got some interesting stuff. That's his wife and kid. He has 2 kids. So this is the other thing that I saw all over Twitter and even on Instagram. I put some stuff in my stories about Charlie, and I got messages from people like celebrating his death. And I saw on Twitter people were celebrating his death. I'm like, this is crazy. This is like an actual illness for anybody that's celebrating. Like, he's publicly speaking at a college. He's got a wife and 2 kids. There's no, like, that's messed up no matter who he is, no matter what your political beliefs are. That should not be happening and should not be condoned ever. So just the fact that that is like spreading makes me wonder about the state of things, because what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to go into a bunch of different topics that are some of the most controversial topics in the sphere right now. Not necessarily just a political sphere, but just the world sphere. Because like I said, I don't actually like politics that much. As far as my issue is more with the structure of the system that we're in rather than the politician in the position of power. I don't vote. I haven't voted for, like, I voted whenever I was 18, and that's the only time I've ever voted. So I am outside of the political system and just discussing world events and how things are going rather than talking about like a political party and what should be pushed like that. What else we got here? So yeah, some people are saying that the Charlie Kirk thing is going to be pushed for anti-gun because they say, like, as he was talking, he got shot like right as he was talking about trans people and guns, I guess. And Trump recently said something about, I don't know, it was like, I don't know if it was rage bait or what, about trans people not being allowed to have guns. And then like all the liberals that are like super pro trans started defending the Second Amendment, which is kind of funny since normally they're anti-gun. So I don't know what was going on with that, but people are saying that that's going to be the political slant that's going on with Charlie. But it's pretty clear that whenever you look at the commentators, a lot of them are not speaking super rationally right now. They're calling for more rash actions. Yeah, see, like this type of glazing that Charlie does, I'm like, bro, but rest in peace. So what else we got here? Let me pull up this other page. Here we go. So this is his Twitter page. Today was the first day I've ever looked at Charlie's Twitter page. And guys on Instagram, if you want to see what I'm talking about, head over to YouTube and you can see what I'm talking about. It's on screen. So obviously his last post, well, apparently an hour ago, whoever's running his account, but he was talking about for the past couple of days what this show was originally going to be about. Well, and it still is about, but is the killing of Irina Zaratuska, a Ukrainian refugee that was in Charlotte, North Carolina. I don't know if you guys have seen the video or not, but she was sitting on a bus and got minding her own business and got stabbed to death. And she is not the only Ukrainian refugee that we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about this 16-year-old, her, Liana K. She was a Ukrainian refugee in Germany. But and she was pushed in front of a train. What's crazy about this is both those girls, right? They were both completely minding their own business. They had nothing going on. And we're going to watch this little news coverage in a second. But they're refugees that have left a literal war zone, right? The Ukrainian and Russian conflict. And they, arguably, those two might still be alive if they were still in Ukraine. And a war between, is it on this one or which page I got? They fled a war. So this is a girl. How do you say her name? Ivania. And this is the man that stabbed her, DeCarlos Brown. And Donald Trump, the President Donald Trump, actually spoke out about this event. And Donald said that Brown should face the death penalty. Whether you agree with that or not, it's quite the statement from our own president. But Irania, as being a refugee, she fled a war that was being led by Zelensky against Putin and is forced to be in North Carolina and gets stabbed to death for literally no reason, a completely senseless killing. So let's take a look at this video here, this little news coverage, because they mention a few interesting things about it, and then we'll take a look at a couple different articles. Let me know if this sounds coming through.
For the first time, we are hearing from a commuter on board the train when a refugee from Ukraine was stabbed to death. In an Inside Edition exclusive, she says she's so traumatized, she never wants to get on a train again. She's coming forward as many are asking what the other passengers did to help. Ann Ricagliano has our report, and again, we want to warn you, this video is upsetting.
Did anyone come to her aid? There's more fallout today over the horrific murder of 23-year-old Irina Zarutska on a
So she was literally just sitting there on her phone. Her back was faced to the assailant, did absolutely nothing wrong, completely minding her own business. And you can see the guy stands up and they skip the gruesome part, which is good for them. But I think he stabs her 3 times. And you can see this is a populated train. It's not like there's nobody on it, or bus. Is it a bus or a train? No, it's a train. It's not like there's nobody around. There's plenty of people around. Nobody paying attention. But what's more crazy is what happens after the stabbing. So this is now after he hit her 3 times, and she's looking up, and he got her like around this area.
Fellow passengers don't seem to realize how badly hurt Irina is.
He stood up and walked that way, and you can see the blood trail from the knife, and she starts crying. You can see what's
surveillance video shows
that's all hers, and then she
shows her collapse to the floor,
collapses and expires. And then this is another angle. Here's the assailant here, walking around back and forth muttering, and there's blood all around. But a different angle showed the full event on, like, this is actually cropped here. If you go on social media, you know, social media is like live leak now. And guys on Instagram, come over to YouTube if you want to see what I'm talking about. I'm going to end the live on Instagram here in a second. YouTube.com/Dylan Magaster 2, or just go to YouTube and search Dylan Magaster. But like I said, this is actually a cropped image of the surveillance footage. The full surveillance footage allows you to see everybody in the scene here. And what happens is he walks away, people kind of look and see what happened, and then everybody just goes back to their phones and nobody helps at all. Nobody even moves. Everybody acts as if nothing happened. And what we see is in this news footage, the guy takes off his...
with blood. He's bleeding from a cut hand. Horrified passengers try to get out of his way. When Brown gets off the train, other passengers can be seen running to help Irina.
When he gets off the train, that's quite... I don't know exactly how long after he stabbed her that people finally... And maybe it is just people felt in danger that if they were to go help, then, you know, they would become a victim as well. But yeah, they waited till he left the train before anybody went to help, even though he walked across to the other side of the train.
Takara Howard was sitting several seats away. Do you think people should have helped her?
I really do think people should have helped her. I think a lot of them didn't know what to do in that situation. I think a lot of them was shocked.
The shocking
So I understand people deal with grief in different ways. Me, for example, I probably don't deal with it in the best way possible. And I understand the whole concept of gallows humor and all that kind of stuff. But that is quite the facial expressions to have when saying people should have went to help her, in my opinion. And considering that she was there and she didn't help either, it really lends to the... I mean, you guys tell me in the chat, but to me, she looks...
I really do think people should have helped her. I think a lot of them didn't know what to do in that situation.
Like, I don't know if she's just happy to be on the news, if she's just nervous or whatever, but it's not the best look to be kind of smiling like that, discussing it. Now, they refer now to a guy that got slashed in the face for defending two women in Germany.
Situation, I think a lot of them was shocked.
The shocking slaying has touched a nerve with male model John Rudat, who suffered a slashed face when he tried to help two women hassled on a train while on vacation in Germany.
If I would have been there, my first priority would have been her. She was obviously losing blood.
Do you think they were scared for their own lives?
I think they were scared for their own lives, and that's completely understandable. She was scared, holding herself, and then slumped over unconscious, and they just let her lie there.
Meanwhile, DeCarlos Brown's sister Tracy confronted her.
So the guy, DeCarlo Brown, guys on Instagram, come over to YouTube because I'm going to end that stream and we're going to continue over here. But let me pull up this other article where they talk about this even more. So come on over to YouTube, Dylan Magaster. I'm ending the live on Instagram. Peace. All right, here we go. Now I don't have to worry about the two different things. So Irania, and I think it's this article, or maybe it's the next one, but where is it? So first of all, he has a lengthy criminal history, including convictions for armed robbery, felony larceny, breaking and entering, and family members told CNN he has a history of mental health struggles. So the fact that he, I think actually on Charlie's profile, he says that he was a 14-time offender. Where is it? And Charlie actually had some pretty good takes on what was going on. So he says, America will never be the same. Yeah, we're going to go through some of Charlie's tweets here in a minute. But somewhere on here, he says that he's a 14-time. Yeah, right here. Today, I led a letter calling for the removal of Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes, who released a 14-time offender who went on to murder Irina Zarutska in Charlotte. So that is crazy in and of itself. But let's go back to this article. So not only was he a multiple felon, a reoccurring felon. Oh, it says right here as well, 14 cases. But when asked, Tracy said she talked to her brother after his arrest and asked him why he attacked the woman. He said, because she was reading my mind. So this guy is obviously crazy, like mental institution, cuckoo, crazy. He stabbed her 3 times in the neck and chest because she was reading my mind. This is a 34-year-old man that has gone crazy and obviously should not be in the public space, obviously. Now, if we scroll down, so he was released for a class 1 misdemeanor. What's the mayor saying? I want to be clear, I am not villainizing those who struggle with their mental health or those who are unhoused. Also, those who are unhoused are more frequently the victim of crimes and not the perpetrators. We as a community must do better for those members of our community who need help and have no place to go. So, I've got no issue with helping homeless people. I used to help homeless people a lot. I used to feed homeless people. But that's I don't know. Okay, let's see. First and foremost, my thoughts and prayers go out to the young woman's friends and family. This is a tragic situation that sheds light on problems with society, safety nets related to mental health care and systems that should have been in place. While I do not know the specifics of the man's mental record, what I have come to understand is that he has long struggles with mental health and appears to have suffered a crisis. So, to me, that's a crazy take from the mayor to say, the standard prayers and thoughts and prayers go out to the family, but then just to go like, mental health's a problem. It's not homeless people's fault. I don't want to villainize mental health people. We need to help them get the help that they need. Instead of being like, this guy was arrested 14 different times, should have been in prison. The justice system in that area is not functioning correctly. And maybe there should be some sort of repercussions for, I don't know, the judge, or maybe they should do something about the police situation. But to me, that's a little bit of like a virtue signaling crazy take rather than addressing the fact that like he should have never been let out of prison, obviously. And like I said, President Donald Trump is calling for the death penalty of Mr. Brown. Now, I don't know exactly what I think about the death penalty in regards to my issue with the death penalty is who determines, right? Like, how is it determined to take another person's life? It's not necessarily the ethical question of can somebody do something so bad that they lose the right to live. I think that is kind of unquestioned, but the question is who gets to determine that. And I have some issues giving the state the right to kill its own citizens. But the president of the United States, decent take. Not completely against what he said, because that is an absolutely insane killing. Now, what this reminds me of is 2 different things. Well, a few different things. One, so yesterday Charlie was shot because who knows why, maybe just his political views. 3 days ago, Irania was stabbed. And then on September 2nd, I think, less than 10 days ago, Liana was killed. But before we get into Liana, what's interesting about I don't know how to say her name, Irina, is some people are saying the story is being suppressed. I don't know. Have you guys heard the story before? Did you guys see it on your social medias? Because it was all over my timeline. But apparently, people are saying the story is a bit suppressed and not getting the publicity that it should. What I find interesting about it is I don't know if there's huge amounts of outrage. I've definitely seen people on my timelines being outraged about it. Clearly, Charlie was not happy about it. He did like 15 different tweets about it, and clearly I'm not happy about it. I'm doing a show that is beginning with it, and we'll be moving into other things. What I find interesting about this is obviously what if these situations were reversed? Not necessarily a white woman stabbing a black man to death, but what if it was a black man that had stabbed a white, or sorry, white man that had stabbed a black woman to death? And some people are saying this isn't a race issue, all that kind of stuff, but you cannot ignore the racial aspect in life. Otherwise, you end up with takes that don't actually make any sense. So, whenever it is the other way around, it makes me think of the Michael Brown incident. Now, this happened a long time ago, 2014. I've never really dug too much into the story, still haven't dug a huge amount. But if you were around in 2014, then you definitely remember the story of Michael Brown because it was huge. Started the whole trend of that hands up, don't shoot. And what we were told about that narrative, of course, was that a white racist police officer gunned down a black man. And it became a whole thing about civil rights, about everything like that. Tons of outrage. Unrest in Ferguson is what Wikipedia says right here. And what we were told was that he was shot in the back multiple times. But if we look right here on Wikipedia, he was actually shot a total of 6 times, all in the front of his body. So it's not possible that he was running away, which is what the official narrative that we were originally sold as. And then, of course, the story from the police is that he went towards, Brown's friend, because he was there with Dorian Johnson. Johnson said that the police officer Wilson initiated the confrontation by grabbing Brown by the neck through Wilson's patrol car window, threatening him and then shooting at Brown. At this point, both Wilson and Johnson state that Brown and Johnson fled, with Wilson pursuing shortly after they're behind him. But Wilson, a white male Ferguson police officer, said that an altercation ensued when Brown attacked him in his police vehicle for control of his service pistol. So the question was always, what happened, right? If you try to take a police officer's weaponry, it's not going to end well for you. Obviously, this is pretty common sense stuff. And you can't really complain about brutality or anything like that if you went for the weaponry. And considering the narrative that we were sold in the beginning was that he was shot in the back, when right here it says that he was shot in the front, it makes you question the whole thing. The reason that I bring this up is because when it is in reverse, a white police officer that killed a young black man, which obviously it's not good that Michael Brown was killed. I'm not saying that at all. I think it's horrible that he was killed. My point is the after effect, because this was like a national event. It right here says ignited unrest in Ferguson, started the hands up, don't shoot slogan for protesters. They were everybody was protesting, kind of like George Floyd. The other thing that this situation with Irina is the killing of Austin Metcalf. Now, this is almost the same situation as what happened to Irina. Depends on whose story you take. I haven't done the deepest dive, but let's just read this here. So on April 2nd, 2025, Austin Metcalf, a 17-year-old American student at Memorial High School, was fatally stabbed by Carmelo Anthony, a Centennial High School student of the same age, while attending a school track meet in Frisco, Texas. He died of his injuries at the scene. Anthony surrendered himself to authorities soon after the stabbing and was charged with murder. The incident has been basis for much online attention, misinformation, and fundraising. So they were obviously competing against each other, right? Austin was from Memorial High School. Carmelo Anthony was from Centennial High School. And the story that I've heard, let's just see if it says The stabbing occurred in Memorial High School tent. Approximately, the altercation started when the track and field championship event was delayed due to thunderstorms and heavy downpours. Hunter Metcalf, Austin's twin brother, told Anthony to move out from the Memorial's team's tent. Austin then confronted Anthony. During the argument that ensued, he allegedly told Metcalf, "Touch me and see what happens," while reaching his hand into his backpack. Metcalf then pushed Anthony on the bleachers they were on. In response, he allegedly said, "Punch me and see what happens," to which Austin pushed him. Now, in a legal sense, this is what is the term? It's like inciting. It's not inciting violence, but I saw something recently. A attorney was talking about self-defense and what constitutes self-defense. Now, if you are ever in a physical altercation and you want to make sure that you are legally protected under the guise of self-defense, you cannot say these things because this is what is called instigating. There's a full term, but it's instigating something. If you say "touch me and see what happens," you're provoking them. And I think it's instigating to common duel or whatever it is. Mutual combat. I think that's what they call it. Instigation to mutual combat. I could be wrong on that. But basically, the idea is if you say something like that or "punch me and see what happens," that is not what you're supposed to do. What you're supposed to do is basically say things of the nature of like, "Get away from me, stop, like, don't mess with me." Like, you're not supposed to do any type of instigation. You want to be walking away, moving away. In order for self-defense, they have to be pursuing you. If you get in an altercation and you get up in their face, it's not really self-defense anymore. You need to be moving away from the situation. So anyway, Austin pushed him. In response, he pulled out a black knife from his backpack and stabbed him once in the chest before running away. So the whole thing happened because Carmelo was in the other team's tent, right? And then he stabbed him to death. Now, what's crazy about this is not only just the event, but the aftermath of the event, right? So this is Carmelo Anthony. And like I said, this is a very similar situation to what's going on with Aranya, except for the fact that the guy that stabbed Aranya was 34 years old and crazy. But you'll see once we discuss this aftermath of what happened with Carmelo, you'll see some similarities about what is going on with Mr. Brown. So this is MSN. Here's why Carmelo Anthony's GoFundMe campaign was deleted and where people are sending money instead. So that's insane. It's insane to send somebody that stabbed somebody in the chest money it's insane to have a GoFundMe in the first place. But for people to actually participate and send money to the GoFundMe is absolutely crazy. No matter the person, the race, anything, they're a killer. You should not be funding them. That's crazy. So if we scroll down here, we see that as of Sunday afternoon, the fundraising effort for Anthony and his family had exceeded $400,000, intended to support them during this challenging and difficult time, whereas Metcalf's fund stood at approximately $340,000. That's absolutely nuts. And you can now see some correlations between the Carmelo Anthony incident, the Michael Brown incident, maybe the George Floyd incident if you want to do that. And then this is a Reddit post, but if you followed this whenever it was a big story, obviously it's still a story because I don't think he's gone to trial and been sentenced yet. But Carmelo Anthony's family blowing all the donations on an Escalade and a house rental makes more sense than using it for a defense. So if you saw what was going on when that was going on, 2 months ago, they got all that money and immediately upgraded their house and bought a brand new Escalade, which is also insane. Not only is it insane to get money for stabbing a white man in the chest, it is also insane to buy a house and car from it. Now, how does this relate? Well, let's go back over to Charlie's page, because he was actually talking about this event quite a bit before he got killed as well. And so Colorado sheriff admits he was forced to release a very dangerous inmate from jail because the state law requires criminals found incompetent to stand trial to be released. So this is a different situation, but similar circumstance. I don't know exactly what's going on with that. Van Jones, we don't know why the man did what he did. And for Charlie Kirk to say, we know he did it because she's white, when there's no evidence of that, is pure rage mongering. DeCarlos Brown, quote, I got that white girl. Let's see.
We don't know why that man did what he did. And for Charlie Kirk to say, we know he did it because she's white, when there's no evidence of that, is just pure race mongering, hate mongering.
Yeah, you can hear that. I can't confirm that that's definitely him, but if you listen closely, you can hear him say, I got that white girl. But I can't confirm that that's him that's saying that. But there are some other things about this that are interesting. Where is it? So this is one of the left accuses conservatives of racializing the death of Irania Zatushka while literally making sure to capitalize the word black while not capitalizing the other inferior color of white. That's also crazy. I can understand why people would say that it wasn't a racial issue because the guy is insane. If he's saying that she was reading his mind, I could believe that he's just a crazy person, and that it wasn't necessarily racially motivated, the killing. But what we're talking about is not the actual event. We're talking about the aftermath of how society is handling it. Because like with Charlie Kirk, right after his death, it was politicized that it was the Democrats and we need to go to civil war, which is crazy. And then other people are saying it's for gun control. And then I had people message me saying that it was fake and that he wasn't even dead, that it was a fake death. I was like, people are going, like, are not thinking straight. But to do that, capitalize black and not white, definitely seems racist. You could say that the killing itself wasn't racist, but I would kind of agree with that take that whoever wrote that feels the inferior color of white. But it could just be habit, I guess, but that would be like a subconscious tell, what they call it, like a Freudian slip. Now, if we keep going up here, that poor girl, man. Where is it? This one is crazy. So this man here, Van Jones, that same guy from the previous video that was saying that it was race mongering or rage mongering, whatever. He says white people have a virus in their brain is legitimately one of the most racist things I've ever heard. Let's hear what he has to say.
Even the most liberal, well-intentioned white person has a virus in his or her brain that can be activated at an instant. And so what you're seeing now is a curtain falling away. And those of us who have been burdened by this every minute, every second of our entire lives are fragile right now. So even the most liberal.
So Van Jones delivered a message Friday morning following the George Floyd riots Thursday night in Minneapolis to white liberals who think they are not racist. So he's talking to white liberals. He's not even talking to white conservatives. Normally it's the white conservatives that get called racist all the time, but he's saying white liberals, you're also racist. And I agree with Charlie. Like I said, I've never actually, this is the first day I've checked out Charlie Kirk's Twitter page. And in the past, was not a fan of him. I thought he was a shill and a sellout. And I was not, I'm still not the biggest fan on him. But whenever it comes to these past couple days, what he was tweeting, he seems to be pretty spot on. And that's coming from a guy that I don't like the fact that he's friends with fans. I don't like the fact that he glazes Trump. And I don't like other things I've seen him push. But to say that white people have a virus in their brain that comes out no matter, he said, the most well-intentioned white person.
Well-intentioned white person has a virus in his or her brain.
So this is after the George Floyd riots. I wonder what he would say now about, well, we saw what he said about the killing of Aranya being racialized. He said that well, we have no idea that that's what like that it was race. Like there's no way to determine that But whenever it comes in the other direction, whether it's the Carmelo Anthony, the with Austin Metcalf, or the Michael Brown situation, it's automatically about race, and it becomes a national event that has slogans, protests, and riots. So you can see that there's obviously a double standard. Now, that's not the craziest video I saw on his feed. Look at this. So this is breaking. This is Right Angle News Network. I don't know who they are. Breaking. The official Black Lives Matter account has posted a video stating that black people have a right to violence. That is insane to say, and mass outrage over the slaying of Aranya Zarusta at the hands of a black male in Charlotte, North Carolina. Nobody, if you live in civilized society, nobody has the right to violence. That's kind of the premise of what makes it civilized, is that the police have a monopoly on violence and nobody else is allowed to be violent. That's like the point of society. So let's listen to what she has to say. Like we said, this is the official Black Lives Matters account.
We have a right to violence. All oppressed people have a right to violence. And I'm going to tell you something. It's like the right to pee. You got to have the right place. You got to have the right time. You got to have the appropriate situation. And I'm absolutely convinced that this is it.
So that's racist. That right there, what she said, is definitely racist. I don't know how you can hear that and not think anything other than that is racist. But because it's against white people, it's not necessarily considered racist. And we're going to dig into this whole topic a lot more because she said some very interesting things in that statement. Let's listen to it again.
Right to violence. All oppressed people have a right to violence.
All oppressed people have a right to violence. There is that phrasing again. Oppressed. Oppressed. That is the word always used. Oppressed. And that word is used specifically for a reason because it came from a narrative. It's a narrative word. It's like gun control. It's like any of the other hot button topic words that they use in the public discourse. Oppressed is a groupthink word. It's not that people can't be oppressed authentic, like it's not that there aren't oppressed people. It's that when it's used in the public sphere, it's almost always used in a weaponized way, if you want to say it like that. So that is a crazy take. I haven't seen this, but this is Charlie versus Van Jones. Let's take a look at what he has to say, and then we'll...
A war of words has erupted between Charlie Kirk and CNN's esteemed intellectual Van Jones over the Charlotte stabbing. Let's get into it.
The narrative that they have pushed forward in the last 10 years...
Just so you know, this is yesterday. This is literally the morning before Charlie was shot dead.
Is that there is a relentless assault against black people on behalf of white people. And the data does not show that. In fact, it's the exact opposite. White individuals are actually more likely to be attacked, especially even per capita, by black individuals in this country.
People like Charlie Kirk, Van, they've been looking for opportunities to make this some sort of like reciprocal George Floyd situation. And that's the part that I think he's almost giving away the game. And it's sad to see a lot of people going along with it.
We don't know why that man did what he did. And for Charlie Kirk to say, we know he did it because she's white, when there's no evidence of that, it's just pure race mongering, hate mongering. It's wrong.
All right, time out. I swear, it's amazing how uninformed these people that do these shows are. But let's clue Van into the obvious here before we continue.
Then he says that if something...
He said that she called me an N-word. I don't know if I can say that on this platform. But you can see this is all the way up here. She is way back here. So the fact that people waited until he got off the train to help is absolutely crazy, because they're not even close. And the least you can do is at least go over there and put some pressure on it, call the police, do something rather than just sit there on your phone. But that's apparently the civilization that we live in these days. And some people say it's the, what's that one study that they did? It's like a cognitive dissonance kind of thing where they say, nobody called the police because they thought somebody else called the police. If you guys know what I'm talking about. Yeah, Van Jones is their esteemed intellectual.
Then he says that if something like that had happened the other way, there would be sweeping changes imposed on society. Where is the George Floyd Policing Act? It didn't pass.
Okay, so maybe the George Floyd Policing Act officially didn't pass, but there was, a whole movement started out of it called Black Lives Matter, which, as you'll see later, we can dig into that. I didn't actually have that on my list of things to dig into, but we'll see that Black Lives Matter stems from the exact same issue and has the exact same reasoning about oppression and where does that come from. But not only did that evolve out of the George Floyd event, but there were also protests and riots for months and months. And that was during the lockdowns, right? I was out of the country at this point. I was, not in anywhere. I was just watching it from afar. But that was when everybody was supposed to be locked up in their houses wearing masks. But for some reason, bystander effect. Thank you. For some reason, all the rules were suspended for black protesting. Make of that as you will, but what I am seeing is a double standard. I don't know if you guys are seeing that. I do have this chat right up here, so I am interested to know what you guys think about this situation. So be sure to comment in the chat. Let's see what this last thing is, because this is the last tweet that Charlie put out before he was killed. And then this was put out by his team. So rest in peace, Charlie. If we want things to change, it's 100% necessary to politicize the senseless murder of Irania Zaruchka, because it was politics that allowed a savage monster with 14 priors to be free on the streets to kill her. That's a good take, Charlie. That's a good take. Because that is true. Here's the thing about politics, that I'm not a big fan of politics. Like I said before, I don't like either side, generally. I don't like politicians. But we do live in a political world, right? The politics is what provides the laws, the structure, the everything for society that we live in that is done through politics. Plato said that you must get involved in politics, otherwise you will be ruled by your inferiors. Now, the problem with that is I'd rather not be involved with politics, but he is correct. If you believe your mind to be intelligent, then you must engage in politics, because if not, people who you believe mentally are inferior to you for whatever reason will be in charge of you. So it is a bit of a civil obligation to engage in politics. Now, I say this as somebody who doesn't vote. I don't encourage people to vote. I don't plan on voting anytime soon unless there was a candidate that I actually believed in, and then I might consider it. But my main issue with the government, if you wanted to start fixing it, is first get rid of lobbying, because lobbying is legal bribery. And the second thing is you have to get rid of any type of foreign influence within the government. You cannot have a country's government have influence of another country, because that would be an invasion. I don't know what you want to call it, but if a nation has the right to self-determination, then there must not be foreign influence within the government. And this goes for any country on the planet. France should have France be in control of their own government. And Chile in South America, the Chileans should be in control of their government. So those are the two things that I think would need to happen first before I would even consider a politician to be somewhat helpful. Let's see what this video from the last post from Charlie Kirk says. Yeah, he had some good takes on this situation, so shout out to him.
On August 22nd, Irina Zarutska was stabbed to death on the rail system in Charlotte, North Carolina, by a savage career criminal.
Her life story, I think, will be told both in the United States and Ukraine for years to come. What do you think the importance of this story is most fundamentally?
This was one of the coldest, most senseless murders I've ever seen. She had no interaction with this guy whatsoever. She was sitting minding her own business, and he just takes out a knife and just decides to stab her. I do say this with some form of just heaviness. I don't like politicizing situations like this, but it just necessitates it because there are so many dynamics at play here. Based on the information evidence we have, the attacker did say, "I got that white girl." The attacker racialized it in his own telling of this situation. And we all know this. Any honest observer of your program knows this, including Van Jones even knows this deep down, which is that, of course, if a random white person on a subway took out a knife and stabbed a black girl senselessly to death, there would be massive media coverage. There would be policy changes. There would be people having to apologize for this. We saw this in George Floyd, and yet, for whatever reason, this situation has not garnered even a fraction of that kind of outrage or backlash.
So he is correct about that. I think that is a correct take. That politicizing it, like generally speaking, you know, like whenever they talk about the shootings and things like that, and they immediately go to gun control or whatever, is not like you should allow the victims respect and honor and things of that nature. But if what we just saw is true, that he, Mr. Brown, said, "I got that white girl, she called me," then it should absolutely be politicized. And if you believe in hate crimes, then you could argue, if those things are true, that he said those two things, then arguably this is a hate crime against white people. Now, I know a lot of people that would say you're not allowed, like you can't actually make hate crimes against white people, which we'll get into in a bit, that whole premise, which I don't agree with, because white people are people as well. So Charlie, rest in peace. Somebody asked, do I think he got JFK'd? I don't know exactly who did it, if it was the same people that did JFK, but from what I've heard about Charlie, and I haven't gone through his whole Twitter, but what I heard is that recently he did start criticizing the situations in the Middle East versus, you know, before he used to be super pro all of that situation. So I don't know if that's true. I haven't seen any of that. he just happened to be talking about what I was already planning on talking about today in today's show in the last couple of days. But some people say that he switched that view up recently, and they think, I've heard people say they think that's a motivation for his Charlie's killing. Other people say that it's I saw different posts saying it was maybe a trans person because he was doing the whole trans gun thing. I don't know. But when I saw the footage for the first time, I saw the faraway shot, the faraway angle, not the faraway shot, but the faraway angle. And then I also saw the close-up. Do not recommend watching those. But my first thought was like, that's a professional hit. That is not, like, whoever took that shot knows how to shoot. That's for sure. Because from the far angle, you can't see anybody in the video footage that has a weapon, and in the close-up, you can see it was a very accurate shot. And he was sitting down, so he wasn't moving a whole lot, but he's still moving a bit. You know, with the whole thing with Trump, they said had Trump not turned his head, it would have been an ending shot. But because he turned his head, they say that's what saved Trump. So if that little bit of movement can save your life, making a shot like that is not as easy as some people think it is. And from what I've heard, they say that the shot was taken from over 200 yards away. That's 2 football fields. That is a good shot to hit somebody right here in the neck. And yeah, rest in peace, Charlie. So moving on from Charlie, we can see some ideas about what happened to Irania. Oh yeah, the clip with Ben Shapiro and Charlie. I saw that because they were just talking about the recent bombings that Israel is doing, but I didn't watch the clip. But it just got released like today or yesterday. So yeah, some people, I don't know what happened, but his killer is still at large, has not been found. But what is so crazy about that is that multiple people got doxxed, and the way they were the full first name and last name, which isn't the hugest doxing, but whenever people get doxxed and they're like, he's a registered Democrat and he's the one that did it, and then 2 hours later they go, actually he was cleared, his name was completely cleared. Meanwhile, the influencers in the conservative space are saying this calls for civil war, all this crazy stuff. Like, that is not a good thing to do. That is not how that situation should be handled. Audio is messing up. Can you hear it now? Let's see. I wish I could monitor the audio at the same time, but I can't actually do that. Let me know if it's still messing up, because it looks like it's coming through on my end. Okay, so we're going to move on from Irina and discuss this other poor Ukrainian girl. So Irina was 23 years old. It's like in and out. Mic check. Mic check. Seems like it's better. Okay. I don't know if the audio issues are the cables or the internet connection, but yeah, I'll figure it out. Is the stream laggy at all? Because in the previous streams, I had issues with the actual video lagging as well, but I changed some settings, and I hope I fixed that. But let me know if the stream is laggy at all, if it's just audio issues. Let me know everything in the chat so that I can look into it after the stream. Also, let me know your opinions about what we're talking about. If you like the show, if you don't like the show, if they're good takes, bad takes, what you think about it. So that happened in North Carolina with Irina, a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee. Happened in Utah with Charlie Kirk. And we've got in Germany, Liana K., 16 years old, was pushed in front of a train. Now, this is a crazy story. A 16-year-old Ukrainian girl who fled the war in her country was murdered by an illegal resident from Iraq who pushed her onto train tracks, according to the German prosecutor announcement. The suspect, 31 years old, so we've got another 31-year-old man who should have been deported in 2022. So you've got a 31-year-old man in Germany who should, according to this article, should have been deported in 2022. That's 3 years ago. Was arrested over the weekend after his DNA traces were found on the girl's body. The murder occurred August 11th. Okay, so it's a month ago. Exactly a month ago. Friedland Station. I think this article is from the 2nd, but the incident happened a month ago. So in Friedland Station in Lower Saxony State, Liana K., full names of victims and suspects are confidential by law in Germany, arrived in Germany with her family from the city of Mariupol in Ukraine. Side note on Ukraine, I was up in the Black Sea before the war broke out, and when I was up in the Black Sea, my plan had originally been to sail up to Odessa, up the river, but time constraints and different things happened, and so I wasn't able to. And I really wish I would have, because obviously. But such is life. This story's not about me. It's about Liana K. Oh, no. Okay. Russian invasion. According to the investigation finding, an illegal migrant with Iraqi citizenship suddenly pushed the girl onto the train tracks. At that time, she was speaking to her grandfather on the phone, and he heard her screams before she was struck. So that's obviously horrible for her, but also traumatizing for her grandfather. I'm sure he's going to be hearing that in his nightmares for a very long time. The police were called to the scene due to a complaint about a rampaging man at the station. They found the suspect in a state of intoxication. And if we scroll down, or maybe it's in the other article, it actually says how intoxicated he was. At the time of the crime, he had a blood alcohol level of 1.35%. That is drunk as a skunk. The legal limit for driving is 0.08. So that's like, what, 16, 17 times the legal limit to be able to drive. So, yeah, the dude was pissed. The investigation and what happened was he actually went and got the police, which led them to the rampaging man. They found the suspect in the state of intoxication, which led them to the girl's body. Area residents described him as too blind. Is that this website? No, this website is Israel Hayom. As a terrible person, completely insane. Was he completely insane, or was he just off his rocker drunk? Like, is he actually clinically insane, or was he completely drunk? That's the other thing about Mr. Brown. We don't know, at least I haven't heard anything about if there are any substances in his system. They just say that he was crazy. So Mohammed A., his asylum request was rejected December 2022. That is almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. He should have been deported to Lithuania, the country through which he entered the European Union. He appealed the decision, and it was only in February 2025 that the court rejected his appeal. So it took the court over 2 years to even appeal the decision. So that's insane that you can illegally enter a country, get rejected of your asylum request while you're illegally in the country, not leave, appeal it, and stay in the country for another 2 years before your court hearing. That's actually crazy. Like, if you know about the situation, which this is a totally, well, it's a different situation, but with, come on, keyboard, Vitali in the Philippines. So he was menacing and whatnot. Vitali should be in prison, by the way, like he committed crimes. But he's in the Philippines and he is waiting to be deported or to be sentenced, but he's sitting in the immigration office. And what happens in the Philippines, so if you overstay your visa in the Philippines, they throw you in the immigration jail, which is the jail that he's in, which you can see he's not doing too good from. And they leave you there until your court hearing. So if you're in the Philippines and you overstay your visa, I saw an interview with an Australian man who overstayed his visa. It took him like close to 2 years before he even got to go to court to have his trial, his hearing, to figure out, like, do I need to pay a fine? What's going to happen? Am I going to prison? It took him 2 years for overstaying his visa. But apparently in Germany, if your asylum request gets denied and you don't leave the country, you can just appeal it and stay for another 2 years, and then go and commit crimes. That's actually crazy. Like, insane. Last July, immigration authorities requested to arrest him ahead of his deportation, but the court rejected the request, claiming it was so flawed it couldn't even be examined. A year ago, was it a year ago or this past July? I guess last July would mean this past one, this year. They could have prevented this whole thing from happening. And this poor girl, this 16-year-old girl, would still be alive. Now, what's crazy, even more crazy than all of that, is if we scroll down, we get to what the mother said. In an interview with local media, the mother spoke about her daughter's last conversation. Liana was speaking with her grandfather on the phone moments before she was pushed. He said her voice sounded worried. The mother, who rejected police claims of accident or suicide from the beginning. Because what happened was they originally said that it was a suicide or an accident, and then later they found the Mohammed's DNA on her body, and they determined that he killed her. But the mother, right from the get-go, was like, this is not an accident nor a suicide. She was killed. She had big plans for the future, her mother said. She had just started an internship at a dental clinic 2 months ago. This wasn't an accident. The mother said, in regarding the suspect's psychiatric diagnosis, I'm sure he'll escape punishment. After he recovers, he'll live without pangs of conscience and commit more crimes because he knows that the next time he'll pretend to be mentally ill again. That is what the mother of Liana K. said. That is the state of things in Germany as well. And considering that the suspect was transferred to a close psychiatric facility after a diagnosis determined that he suffers from schizophrenia and refused to speak to investigators. The prosecution is now examining his competency to stand trial. Because if you don't know how it works with people who claim insanity, they have to go through a series of tests with psychologists and other people that determine them, no, this person is clinically sane. They can now go to trial, because you're not allowed to go to trial if you're still having a mental break, which in theory is a good thing. you shouldn't be put on the stand if you're actually like got a screw loose. The investigation revealed that Mohammed A. used several different identities. We're now checking multiple names, he quoted Bild, adding that the girl was a, quote, random victim. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't look too good for Mr. Mohammed. And it says that this has sparked outrage in Germany. What is this? The Minister of Lower Saxony from Social Democratic Party said that it's impossible to explain to citizens how people remain in Germany for years when another country in the Union is responsible for them. That is true, except it is possible, and the answer is that whoever is running the government is a traitor of the people, because the very premise of the government is to protect and serve. Or some people say it's the police, but that's the goal of the government. The whole point of the government is to establish a civil society. If they're not doing that, if they're allowing crime to run rampant, if they're allowing people to indiscriminately enter a country, then they are not upholding the most basic fundamental attributes of what it means to have a functioning government. And what I find so frustrating about these types of situations, other than the senseless killing, is that whenever it comes to foreign countries, other countries besides America and Europe, non-white countries, these types of questions about immigration and law enforcement and whatnot are not hot button topics. There are plenty of countries that have super corrupt governments, but where else in the world do things like this happen besides in the white Western countries? Where else in the world are you allowed to just enter into a country illegally, appeal the claim that you've been rejected, not get deported, not get arrested, and then go on and commit a crime? Like we said, in Vitali's case in the Philippines, he should be in jail because he was menacing and being disrespectful and stealing, and he was committing crimes, but he didn't harm anybody. He didn't physically harm anybody. And now he's sitting in an immigration jail. He hasn't even gone to real jail yet. He's sitting in the immigration jail to be determined whether or not he should be deported or sentenced. He's awaiting his trial. And he's gone from this size to this size, awaiting his trial in a situation that looks absolutely horrific. So where is the outrage for that? He committed a crime. He was in the country legally, but now he's being held in jail, as I think he should be. But it's okay when the Philippines do it, but whenever it comes to the white Western countries, they're supposed to release the criminals. Why is that? Why is that? Well, I can tell you some reasons why. What's interesting now is that because of reoccurring situations like these, not only, there's another image of her, 16 years old, died, Saxon, Germany. Is there anything else in here? Yeah. Not only because of senseless killings, but because of other crime statistics and issues, what we find is that in Europe, whether you agree with it or not, what is rising is what is referred to as fascism. You may not like fascism, you may like fascism. That is irrelevant to this conversation, because what is happening is, wait, where is it? This is in Italy. There is a rise of what is being referred to as fascism. Reposting this is r/Europe. Reposting because my previous post was removed for a lack of context. In Italy 2025, fascists escorted by police perform Nazi salutes to honor a fascist killed in the 1970s. Meanwhile, anti-fascists are identified by the police. Search Ramelli 2025 on Google for context. We will search that. But considering this is Italy, I do want to make a quick note that because they are Italian, to refer to that as a Nazi salute would be inaccurate. That is a Roman salute. And considering they are Italian, they are the descendants of the Romans, it seems a little bit unfair to say that their historical salute is now a Nazi one. Just a side note, I'm not saying these people are right or wrong. I'm just saying they're Italian. They are the descendants of the Romans. If anything, that is their salute. Like, it goes back historically. You can say they shouldn't do it anymore, but at least like use the right name. So anyway, this says to search up Ramelli. Let's see, what does this say? I haven't looked into this at all, so we're going to be figuring this part out together. The assassination of Sergio Ramelli was a political crime that took place in Milan, Italy, 1975, during a period of violent and deadly confrontations between rightists and leftists in the country. Milan, Italy, motive, political, ideological opposition. Not a fan of that. Not a fan of any of these. Militiants of the... Oh, was he organized by the militiants of the extra parliamentary... I would assume he was probably the communist if they're saying he was killed by the fascists. So, following the 1969-70 large-scale series of industrial actions in Italy, the acts of civil disobedience and mass demonstrations often turned to violent confrontations between left militants and the law enforcement authorities of the Italian state. In November 1969, policeman Antonio Anorama, while on duty during a demonstration organized by the Maoist organization Unione dei Comunisti Italiani. Sorry, let me try that again. Unione dei Comunisti Italiani. Is that better? Was killed after being struck by an iron tube hurled by demonstrators and losing control of the police car he was driving. Who was struck with the iron tube? Policeman Antonio was killed by the iron tube. Okay. On December 12th of the year, right-wing terrors allegedly did... So, okay, side note, because we're on YouTube, I hate Newspeak. I really do not like Newspeak. But I don't actually know exactly how many things you can say on this platform, because you see people self-censoring, which I'm not a fan of, around certain topics, and there are certain topics that are like shadow banned. That's for sure true. But then you also see different documentaries and things where they use all the words. So I don't know exactly how it works. A lot of it has to do with context, I think, which in a minute we'll actually take a look at the YouTube terms of service to show that like I'm not breaking them at all. But anyway, the right-wingers exploded at the headquarters of Banca Nazionale de Agricola in Piazza Fontana, near Duomo, killing 17 people and wounding 88. On 15th December, Giuseppe, member of the Milan-based anarchist Association Ponte del Gusafi and secretary... Just get to the point. What happened? Oh, that's all political context. The assassination was a political crime that took place in Milan, Italy, during a period of violent and often deadly confrontations between right and leftists. Where does it actually talk about... Zakabi, is that who? No, that's Ramelli. Where does it actually talk about him? Among the many tactics used Ramelli. Okay, here we go. Among the many tactics used by militants from both sides, what was so-called practice de chunni of the spoons, a prominent member of the opposite camp would be ambushed outside their place of work or residence and then severely beaten up. They were a carculalo, cooked, as a means of intimidation. Holy cow. Is cook? Are they using cooked in the same way that we use cooked now, or are they talking about like cooked? Like the beating up was the cooked? Like, yo, that bro is cooked. According to the subsequent testimony of Avanguardia Operaria Memore Luigi Montianari, some young persons at the university, led by Roberto Riccio Grassi, decided in a meeting to give Ramelli a lesson, while according to Giuseppe Ferrari Bravo's testimony, the order above came from above, from the hierarchy. 13th of March, 1975, around noon, a group of 8 went to wait for Ramelli near his home. 6 individuals acted as lookouts, while Marco Costa and Giuseppe Ferrari Bravo were assigned the task of the physical assault. Ramelli was attacked approximately 13 hours at 1 p.m. as he was taking out his parked scooter. The beatings to the head with wrenches, iron bars stopped, according to the defendant's testimony at the subsequent trial, when a woman from nearby balcony started shouting at them. The group of attackers left the scene while Ramelli remained unconscious on the pavement. He was taken to the Policiano of Milan, where he remained in a coma for 47 days before succumbing to his wounds on April 29th, 1979. Well, that is not good, and that is, do not condone that. But what they're saying online is that they're celebrating that. I feel like we would need more context about what's actually going on here, because this is not the only image like this I've seen come out of Italy. Because let's just see if I can pull it up. Italian, I think it's the Prime Minister. Italian Prime Minister speech. I don't want the 20-minute one. But this lady, the way she's been talking, let's see what this is. She sounds like a OG Italian.
My deepest gratitude goes to Chairman John Rogers, President Frederick Kemp, the entire Atlantic Council for this distinguished recognition I am very proud of. And I thank Elon for the beautiful words that he had for me. He's doing to reform its country. He calls doctrines of aggression or authoritarianism. However, doctrinalism is the correct. I don't know if nationalism is the correct word, because it often recalls doctrines of aggression or authoritarianism. However, I know that we should not be ashamed to use and defend words and concepts like nation and patriotism, because they mean more than a physical place. They mean a state of mind to which one belongs in sharing culture, traditions, values.
She's sounding good to me. And this is actually leading perfectly into what we're going to discuss next. But everything she's saying right there sounds good. I don't know much about her. I'm just going off the words that she said right there. But let me know in the chat, does that sound good to you? Because that sounds good to me.
When we see our flag, if we feel proud, it means that we feel the pride to be part of a community. and that we are ready to do our part to make its fate better. Well, for me,
Isn't that what a nation is supposed to be, what she just said? A group of people working together to make it better, to make society better, to make civilization better? Isn't that kind of the point? That things should be improving, that crime should be going down, that people's living situations should be going up, that everything should be getting better, people should be working together for the betterment of the people around them? Isn't that what the point of a country is? Like, in theory, isn't that what it means to even have a country?
the West is more than a physical place. By the word West, we do not simply define countries by specific geographical location, but as a civilization built over the centuries with the genius and sacrifices of many. The West is a system of values in which the person is central, men and women are equal and free, and therefore the systems are democratic, life is sacred, the state is secular, and based on the rule of law. I ask...
That is one of the most important things, what you just said there, based on the rule of law, because that is one of the main issues, isn't it? Is that we are not basing society on the rule of law anymore in the West, in the United States of America, and in Europe. Many crimes that are clearly crimes and criminal acts are not prosecuted as such. They are allowed to continue, as we saw with Mr. Brown here in Por Arena, that he was a 14-time offender and was allowed to roam the streets. Now, that is not upholding the rule of law. Or with Carmelo Anthony, I believe he has yet to be tried, but I don't think anybody is disputing that he stabbed Austin Metcalf in the chest. I think that is a fact. I don't think they're arguing he didn't do it. I think they're arguing that his motivations might be acceptable. But for him to be out of prison and then to be given $400,000 and then for the family to go buy an Escalade in a house with that money, that blood money, would not be upholding the rule of law, would it? In my mind, it would not. So what she just said there is like super important as a foundational attribute of what it means to be in Western society, is that we must uphold the rule of law. Now, you could argue that you don't agree with some of the laws, and that's fine by me. There's plenty of laws that I don't necessarily agree with, but you cannot just allow the laws to not be enforced indiscriminately or maybe discriminately, because then you end up in a situation that I heard described accurately as anarcho-tyranny, where the law-abiding citizens get punished if they break any of the rules, but the criminals do not get punished. So the criminals live under anarchy and the citizens live under tyranny. That's what's known as an anarcho-tyranny.
I can wonder to myself and to you, are these values of which we should be ashamed of? And
what do you think in the chat? Those values that she listed out, the equality of men and women, democracy, the upholding the rule of law, are those values that we should be ashamed of or proud of?
And are these values, and do these values drive us away from the others, or they bring us closer to the others? As West,
I assume she's talking about the other citizens. And I would argue that those types of laws, values do bring us together, because how can you come together if you do not collectively value the rule of law. Because you cannot, it would make it, maybe it is possible, but in my mind, it would make it extremely difficult to trust somebody if you did not also both agree to the law. Like, if you're a law-abiding citizen, it makes it difficult to trust a criminal. If you're two crims, there might be, what do they say, no honor amongst thieves, right? There might be some sort of code, but realistically, can you trust that person? I haven't actually looked into the Colorado. I can pull that up in a minute, but we're gonna go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here. I'm gonna put this on and put some water to make some tea.
As West, I think we have two risks to counter. The first is what one of the greatest contemporary European philosopher, Roger Scruton, called oikophobia, from the Greek words oikos, which means home, and phobia, which means fear. Kyriakos, this is my personal tribute to your word tonight, okay?
So the fear of the home.
Sorry for being so serious, but I want to share with you this thought I had. Oikophobia is the aversion to one's home.
The aversion to one's home. So this is what people refer to as self-hatred. Now, self-hatred is very, very prominent in our society. Not only at an individual level, but as a societal level, which I assume this is what she's going to be talking about. But the idea that you should hate the place that you came from, or the place that you came from should be destroyed, is a type of illness. Even if you don't necessarily agree with everything in the situation, it is still from whence you came, correct?
Contempt, which leads us to want to violently erase the symbols of our civilizations in the US as in Europe. The second risk is the paradox that while on the one hand, the West looks down on itself, on the other hand, often claims to be superior to the others. The result is that the West is in danger of becoming a less credible interlocutor.
A less credible
The so-called global South is demanding more influence.
What did you just say there?
The result is that the West is in danger of becoming a less credible interlocutor. The so-called global South is demanding more influence. Developing nations that are by now largely established there are autonomously collaborating among themselves. Autocracies are gaining ground on democracies, and we risk looking more and more like a closed and self-referential fortress. In Italy, to reverse this course, we decided to launch, for example, the Mattei Plan for Africa, a model of cooperation based on equal footing to build a new long-term partnership with African countries. For yes, crises are multiplying in the world, but every crisis hides also an opportunity.
Now, not to put her on blast here, because so far from what I've heard, sounds pretty good. Some famous people once said, never let a crisis go to waste. Mr. Churchill. And Winston Churchill, like him or not, may not have been as upstanding throughout history as he was taught. It depends on which aspects of him you look at, as of course with anybody in history. But yeah, never let a crisis go to waste. She says within crisis there is opportunity. She's right. She is right, but I just wanted to point that out.
For it requires to question oneself.
I don't know. Is she Mussolini's granddaughter?
Above all,
what's her name?
We
Maloney. Let's hear what she has to say.
need to recover awareness of who we are. As Western peoples, we have a duty to keep this promise and seek the answer to the problems of the future by having faith in our values. A synthesis born out of the meeting of Greek philosophy, Kyriakos, Roman law, Christian humanism. In short, as my English professor, Michael Jackson, used to say,
I want to hear what she just said there again, because
out of the meeting of Greek philosophy, Kyriakos, Roman law, Christian humanism. In short,
that is like one of the best definitions of the Western. Greek philosophy, Roman law, Christian ethics, that's the West.
as my English professor, Michael Jackson, used to say, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. And no message could have been, and we know it. We know the song. Guys. We have to start with ourselves, to know who we really are, and to respect that, so that we can understand and respect others as well. There is a narrative that authoritarian regimes care so much.
That is true. That you have to, people talk about self-love and everything like that, in that you gotta love yourself, take care of yourself, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to life-saving, like for example, in the sea, the whole concept of how to save somebody's life who is drowning, that you don't allow them to drown you. You need to make sure that you're safe and secure before you can help them. It's like the idea when the mask falls down in the airplane, you put it on yourself first, because if you're unconscious, you can't help anybody. So you have to help and respect your own value, your own life, in order to help other people. And if in the instance of drowning, if somebody is completely panicking, the correct thing to do is subdue them. And if you cannot subdue them for their own safety, and you run the risk of them harming and drowning you in the case of a life-saving situation, then it's better to allow them to drown. It's not good, it's still bad. And lifeguards are incredible. Like, if you ever want heartfelt moments, look up, I think it's like Bondi Beach in Australia. Those lifeguards, absolute heroes.
It's about the idea of the inevitable decline of the West. The idea that democracies are failing to deliver.
I don't like, I think she's going in the route that I'm talking about right now, but that concept of the inevitable decline of the West, I do not subscribe to, and I do not think it is a good idea to subscribe to that. Now, for a long time, I've believed in collapse, that collapse is coming, and I do, in many ways, think that that is happening or going to happen, but I don't think we should view it as an inevitable thing. Just like the people that say that we're in end times, like, well, you just got to let it happen. It's the prophecy, let it happen. It's like, you're making it a self-fulfilling prophecy. It is not inevitable. We have free will. We are allowed to interact with reality and change reality. If things are going in a bad direction, you can alter course and move it into a good direction. So that concept that the West will inevitably decline, I don't think you should believe that, and I don't think it's a helpful or helpful or productive thing to say. I think it's actually like a mental toxicity.
An army of foreign and malign trolls and bots is engaged in manipulating reality and exploiting our contradictions.
Say that again.
The idea that democracies are failing to deliver. An army of foreign and malign trolls and bots is engaged in manipulating reality and exploiting our contradictions. But to the authoritarian funds, let me say very clearly that we will stand for our values. We will do that.
So, is that why people are doing this? Or why are people doing this? Because I've seen videos of her speaking and then everybody throws up a Roman. And like I said, they are Roman. They are Italian. They are from Rome. Maybe not technically from the city, but Rome is in Italy. They are the Romans. Let's see what else she has to say. This speech is getting better and better.
President Reagan once said, above all, we must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenal of the world is so formidable as the will and the moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. I couldn't agree more. Our freedom and our values and the pride we feel for them are the weapons our adversaries fear the most. So we can't give up the strength of our own identity, for that would be the best gift we can make to authoritarian regimes.
And the idea of what she just said, the giving up your own identity, your own cultural identity, your own personal identity, anything like that, when you're asked to give that up to somebody who is embracing their identity, their cultural identity, you're supposed to lay down your culture, your civilization, your identity, what you value, so that somebody who embraces their culture, their identity, their values can take your place. That is not how it should be. And that message is being pushed, maybe not as explicitly as I just laid it out, but that message is going around in a subtle subconscious way for a lot of people. And you can feel it. Like, that is why somebody like her is becoming so popular, because she is calling it out and she is saying, like, we're not gonna stand for this. We're gonna finish up her little speech and then we're gonna go into something that she spoke about a little bit more. But somebody was saying that she was Mussolini's granddaughter. Is that true? Wow, she is. Wow, that actually is Mussolini's granddaughter. What? Get out of here, Reuters. I did not know that that was Mussolini's granddaughter, but she's spitting facts. What do you think in the chat? You think she's spitting facts, or is she off the deep end? Because to me, I don't see anything extreme about what she was saying. That sounds just like very basic nationhood. I don't see anything extreme about that. Let me know. Do you think that's extreme?
So at the end of the day, patriotism is the best response to declinism. Defending our deep roots is the precondition for reaping ripe fruit. Learning from our past mistakes is the precondition for being better in the future. I will also use the words of Giuseppe Prezzolini, perhaps the greatest conservative intellectual in the 20th century in Italy. He who knows how to conserve is not afraid of the future, because he has learned the lessons of the past. We know how to face the impossible challenges that this era confronts us only when we learn from the lessons of the past. We defend Ukraine.
That's why somebody like 1984 Orwell, George Orwell, I almost forgot his name. George Orwell said, if you control the past, you control the present. And if you control the present, then you control the future. What she just said, in order to make it into the future, you have to understand and learn from the past. But if you control the present, then you can control the past through the history, right? Or sorry, if you control the past, then you control the present. So you do have to learn from the past, but you also have to make sure that the past that you're learning is an accurate past.
For we have known the cause of a world in which the law of the strongest prevails. We fight human traffickers because we remember that centuries ago we fought to abolish slavery. We defend nature and humankind because we know that without the responsible work of humans, it is not possible to build a more sustainable future. As we develop artificial intelligence, Elon, we attempt to govern its risk because we fought to be free, and we do not intend to trade our freedom in exchange for greater comfort. We know how to read these phenomena because our civilization.
Imagine if any of the American politicians said what she just said. We are not willing or wanting to trade our freedom for greater comfort. I mean, in my mind, that's an awesome statement. That's a really good statement. But how many people would agree with that? Do you agree with that? Do you think that you personally would not trade your freedom for greater comfort? Do you think the society that we live in would be willing to trade their freedom for greater comfort? Because whenever I look around, it seems like that's what's happening, except for the fact that greater comfort isn't necessarily coming. It just seems that people are trading their freedoms.
Has given us the tools. The time we live in requires us to choose what we want to be and what path we want to take. We can continue to fool the idea of the decline of the West. We can surrender to the idea that our civilization has nothing more to say or no more routes to chart. Or we can remember who we are, learn also from our mistakes, add our own piece of the story in this extraordinary walk, and govern what happens around us to leave our children a better world, which is exactly my choice. And I like to think that the reason why you have chosen me for this precious award is that you share this choice. Thank you.
Okay, so somebody in the chat said that that's not actually Mussolini's granddaughter. That Mussolini's granddaughter was a woman that was in her party that left. Anyway, that was a bit of a diversion. But one of the things that she said in that, that's not the right one, where she said she didn't know if nationalism was the right word because nationalism has a context of authoritarian aggression, I think is what she said. Now, the reason we even got to talking about her is because we're saying that fascism seems to be on the rise in Europe, and not just Italy. It also seems to be the rise in Germany and other places, at least what is being called fascism by the media. Is it actual fascism? I don't know. I'm not there to assess it myself. You only see what is proposed in the media. But it stems from situations like this with the 16-year-old. It stems from many times not only the immigration issue, but it is an aspect of it. But what it stems from even more than that is what she was saying about not allowing the destruction of the West. So she mentioned, and we're going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here. So that's not the one, this one. This is a conversation I had with ChatGPT, and we're going to just see what ChatGPT says. So this is the beginning. That's the first question. What is a nationalist? A nationalist is someone whose primary political and cultural loyalty is to their nation, often placing the interest, unity, and sovereignty of that nation above those of outsiders and foreign powers. Now, real quick, before because where is it at? This one. Before we get into this, just because we're going to get into some controversial topics, I want to go through the hate speech policy to make sure that I have no intention to break the community guidelines, but just so you can see what they are. It's not allowed on YouTube. You're not allowed to content that promotes violence or hatred against individuals or groups based on any of the following attributes, which are, these are protected group status. So you cannot make sweeping accusations or promote violence based on any of those things, which I would never do. I don't believe in moving like that. And just so you can see some examples of what they mean, types of content that violate this policy: dehumanizing of individuals or groups by calling them subhuman. I would never do that. Everybody's human. Comparing them to animals, insects, diseases. Praising or glorifying the violence against individuals or groups of a protected status. Now, would the things that people are saying about Charlie Kirk being a good thing, would that be breaking of that? I'm not saying that, but I said that people online are saying that, and I think that is atrocious. I wonder if YouTube takes things down for that or not. I don't know. The honest question. Using racial, religious, or other slurs and stereotypes that incite or promote hatred based on protected group status. This can take form of speech, text, or imagery promoting these stereotypes and treating them as factual. Well, like I said, I would never do that towards anyone based on those specific things. We're talking about individual people in regards to the things we were discussing before. And I don't promote hate at all. I don't believe in hate. There is an interesting one here about examples, just so we know what we're not allowed to say. You're not allowed to say any protected group people are less intelligent because their brains are smaller. You're not allowed to say that specifically. You're not allowed to say any protected group status have an agenda to run the world and get rid of us. You're not allowed to say that sentence with that. What's inserted there is any fill in the blank of that. You're not allowed to say that on YouTube, which I would never say that on YouTube. Or in general. You can't say that they shouldn't be educated. All the event, you're not allowed to, this is like the Jones incident. You're not allowed to say that it was an insignificant number, because of course it's never an insignificant number because every life is valuable. Okay, so now that we just know kind of where the boundaries are, I have no intention on breaking any of that, but considering the topic we're about to go into, it's important to understand that that's not what I'm saying. Okay. So, nationalist, someone who primary political culture is loyal to their nation, often placing the interest, unity, and sovereignty of that nation above those outsiders, foreign powers, or global institutions. At its core, nationalism is the belief that a nation, a people bound by a shared language, culture, history, or identity, should be politically self-determined. That's important, that a nation be politically self-determined, because the concept of nationhood, a country, is self-determination. That is something that not the Geneva Convention, right here. The UN, the National Nations Charter of 1945, enshrined self-determination as a guiding principle, especially after World War II, for a nation. So a nation inherently has self-determination according to the United Nations Charter of 1945. So if you're a nationalist, you believe what the United Nations Charter of 1945 said. The well-being and continuity of that nation take precedent over external or universal concerns. So it's basically, you're not going to sacrifice your nation's people or well-being for the outside world. As a government, that's how a government should function. You could say at an individual level, person to person, maybe you should be self-sacrificing for people. That's fine if you believe that. But the concept of a government should be to protect its people. That's the point of the government. The government should not be sacrificing its people for the outside world, because that would be a crime against the people, because it's not the person's choice to be sacrificed, right? If you're going to be self-sacrificing, you need to do that consciously and make it your own decision. If somebody else sacrifices you, then that would be a crime. Loyalty to the nation is seen as a central virtue, sometimes even higher than a loyalty to class, religion, or ideology. Now, that can be controversial. I can see why that would be controversial, saying that it's more important to be loyal to the nation than to somebody's religion or ideology or class. But I don't see that as inherently bad or inherently wrong or inherently evil. I can see why you could say somebody should be more loyal to their family or to their religion than to the nation. I can understand that concept. But those are the core of nationalism's beliefs. Shades of nationalism. You have civil nationalism, based on the shared political values of citizenship. Ethnic nationalism, based on the shared ancestry, heritage, or bloodline. Cultural nationalism, based on the preserving traditions, language, and cultural continuity. Economic nationalism, domestic industries and workers over international trade and global markets. So instead of prioritizing the people of the country, you're prioritizing the economy of the country. So it's a significantly different thing, because you can have a strong economy at the detriment of the people living within a nation. Religious nationalism, when nation identity fuses with religious identity. The spectrum, positive forms emphasize self-determination, unity, and resistance against imperialism. Anti-colonial nationalism is the example that GPT gives. Negative forms can veer into chauvinism, xenophobia, or supremacy, where other nations or peoples are devalued. In essence, a nationalist is one who says, my people, my land, my culture first. Now, the next question I asked is, what is a fascist? Because based off of that definition of a nationalist, I don't necessarily see anything inherently wrong with that. It just depends on how far you take it. But that seems to be like the view a government governing a people should have, is that they should be putting their people first. It seems to me to be the point of a government. So, yeah. What is a fascist? A fascist is someone who adheres to fascism, a far-right, ultra-nationalistic political ideology characterized by authoritarian power, a suppression of opposition, and the merging of state and corporate interests under a myth of a national or cultural rebirth. Now, while it looks slightly different from Mussolini, Germany, Spain, most scholars agree on several common traits: authoritarian leadership, absolute loyalty, so cult of personality, ultranationalism, a rebirth myth. The nation is portrayed as humiliated, weakened, or corrupted. A promise of revival through unity and purity and strength. Now, this aspect of what they're saying, common traits, the issue with that is, what if that is actually true? What if that is a factual statement? Right? Like, what if the country has been humiliated, the nation has been humiliated, has been weakened, and it has been corrupted? If you were to point out, and I'm not saying it has, I'm saying what if it has, would then pointing that out be then associated with fascism? Because if those things were true, you should portray them as such, because you're trying to live in reality. And then promise of revival through unity, purity, and strength. Again, that aspect, independent as two independent statements, I don't see anything inherently wrong with those two statements. If those things were true, if your nation had been weakened, then reviving it through unity, maybe the purity aspect is like a little bit problematic, but if these things were actually true, that it was weakened and corrupted, I guess that would be what the purity is talking about, to purify the corruption. But yeah, if your government was corrupted, you would want to uncorrupt it. And I guess the word for that would be purity. So I don't see how that, my point is just like, if you had a weakened, corrupted government, how else would you actually talk about it without it falling under that statement? Now, I don't believe in cult of personality. Like, I see issues with that. I'm just saying those two statements, I don't see any inherent issues with. The glorification of war, discipline, and sacrifice, I do see issues with that. And what's interesting about that is the President of the United States of America rebranding the Department of Defense. Is that what he rebranded? The Department of War. That seems, the office of the Secretary of War, that seems very George Orwell, 1984, war is peace type of thing. And that would fall under suit of glorification of war, in my opinion. And violence is seen as a cleansing. The reason that we're talking about this is because things are being said to be fascist that might only be nationalistic. And the question is, are they both bad? Is it bad to be nationalistic? Because nationalism seems to be the view that a government should have in order to maintain being a nation throughout time space. If you don't have self-preservation as the mindset of the government running a nation, then it's not going to be self-preserved. But if self-preservation is then framed as fascism and dismissed, then there could be issues, because you're basically dismissing a nation's ability to be self-preserving. We got suppression of the opposition, censorship, no socialism, corporatism, national social hierarchies, racial, ethnical, outside minorities or enemies within are scapegoated, and the fusion of politics with aesthetic and myth. Yeah. Okay. So now the next thing that I asked it, because we want to go down a thought experiment, not a question of how reality is actually moving at the moment, but a hypothetical idea of, if those are the definitions of those viewpoints, then if a country were to be invaded by illegal immigrants, would a nationalist be labeled as a fascist because he wants his country back? That's the question. If self-preservation is what a nationalist believes, but when they try to enact it, if they get called a fascist, that seems to be a problematic thing, which then sets a type of people group in the realm of not being able to self-preserve. It seems to be against their own survival. So this is what GPT said. The glazing from GPT is too much. So the nationalist position says we have borders, culture, and sovereignty. If controlled immigration undermined that, we must restore order so that nations survives, so the nation survives. This can be expressed domestically through voting, legal reform, and enforcement. When people call it fascism in today's politics, notice in my questions I didn't ask it anything about today. I just asked, like, in theory. Anyone who strongly defends borders or national identity may be labeled a fascist, even if they are simply expressing nationalism. Now, that is a problem, isn't it? Am I the only one that sees that as a problem? Let me know in the chat. He said, be asked self-preservation against what or whom. You don't have to preserve yourself against anything specifically necessarily. If you want your own culture to continue in through existence, you're just preserving it, right? Like if I have if I'm out in the wilderness camping and I have a fire going, I just want to keep that fire going. It's not necessarily that it's against anything. It's not in opposition to anything. It's just keeping it going, allowing it to continue, allowing a country to be self-determining, allowing people groups to be self-determining, allowing everybody the right to exist and to embrace their own cultural heritage, as is allowed throughout the world and as is normal throughout the world. The word fascist has become a rhetorical weapon, often detached from historical meaning. So, one of the reasons we're talking about that is because when we see things in Europe where people are upset over senseless killings like this by migrants that should have been deported 3 years ago, according to this article from Israel Hayom, they move more and more towards a nationalistic perspective because they are seeing, as you can see by Liana's mother's own words, I'm sure he'll escape punishment. After he recovers, he'll live without pangs of conscience and commit more crimes because he knows the next time he'll pretend to be mentally ill again. So if the nation in which you're living is not protecting its citizens, then people are going to move towards ideas that enforce self-protection. If they're instead protecting people from outside of the country that are now in the country legally or illegally, but they are not from the country, if nations are putting them ahead of the people who are historically built and created the country and are culturally that country, if the nation is putting the foreigners ahead of them, the native peoples are going to be not happy and move towards nationalism inherently through the simple desire to be self-preserving. But the issue is that if you move towards nationalism, what ChatGPT is saying here, and you can see it in the real world, they get labeled as fascist because fascist apparently is extreme nationalism, but basic nationalism is just self-preservation. A true fascist doesn't want to regain control. They typically want to scapegoat minorities, demands on total obedience, glorify violence, blah, blah, blah. I obviously don't agree with that. A nationalist says stop illegal immigration to preserve sovereignty. A fascist says purge foreigners, dissenters, crush opposition, rebuild the nation under a single will. Now, obviously, that's a bit extreme. So the, let's see. If a nationalist wants mass deportations, will they then be labeled a fascist? Because the idea that we are investigating is if the country has been invaded by a mass amount of illegal immigrants, if the people of the nation just want to go back to preserving how it was, are they going to be labeled as a fascist, which is what is seeming to happen in Italy with that prime minister. What she said based off of what she said, sound perfectly fine, logical. It seemed very basic to me. It didn't seem extreme at all. But people seem to be calling her a fascist. So the nationalist logic, these people entered illegally. They're undermining sovereignty, order, and resources. The nation must enforce its laws, even if that means deporting large numbers. The consistent nationalism prioritizing the integrity of the nation state. The fascist label, mass deportation equals authoritarian, cruel, xenophobic, and fascist. The word fascist has become shorthand for any hardline nationalist policy, even if it's carried out through legal democratic means. Now, what does this say? Fascist regimes did carry out mass expulsion, persecutions, ethnic cleansings. In modern imaginations, mass deportations sound like the first step towards fascism, even if it's framed as restoring law and order. So what that says right there is that because of the historical narratives that we have grown up on, that we have in our collective consciousness, any concept of mass deportations instinctively makes people feel as if it is going towards fascism, even if it is simply a nationalistic, self-preserving instinct. And that is what makes this conversation so pernicious. Because if you are a country, a nation, you should have the right to exist no matter where you are on the globe. I almost just spilled my drink. Whether it's South America, Africa, Asia, Europe, or North America, you are supposed to have the right to self-determination. Now, if any of those countries were to receive mass immigration, legal or illegal, and the citizens of that nation, the what's the word? The natives of those lands then felt as if their land was succumbing to a type of destruction, would naturally lean towards a nationalistic perspective. But because of the narratives that we have been given, they will be labeled as fascists. So this word fascist is a political slur. I think that's actually what GPT even said here. Is that... Maybe it's later on in the conversation. But it's not that there is no such thing as fascist, and that I'm sure there are people, but it is used, the word is used as a slur. It's used to shut people down so that they cannot articulate their ideas. So, okay, the distinction. A nationalist deportation policy uses law and state apparatus to remove people who entered illegally. Could be debated in parliament, voted on, and carried out under constitutional checks. Fascism goes beyond legality, targets whole ethnic, religious groups regardless of individual status, uses force, propaganda, scapegoating to unify the population under a, quote, purity myth, suppresses dissent so no one can question the policy. In political rhetoric, nuance collapses. Anyone saying deport millions is framed as genocidal, even if they mean deport those who violated immigration law. This is a conversation I've had with people where I say, if they go, well, some of these people, they've got no violent criminal record. But if they entered into the country illegally, they are by definition a criminal because they have broken the law, by definition. But I've been called a fascist for saying something as simple as that, is like, if you illegally cross a border, that makes you a criminal. I've had people go, "You sound like a fascist." It's like, isn't that the law? Isn't that like what the law says? Isn't that the point of having a law and border, is so that there's legal movement? The label fascism then sticks because it's emotionally powerful and historically loaded. Historically loaded. So just like before with Charlie Kirk, we were saying that the people were calling for civil war based on a false narrative. That is a historically loaded term. So yes, a nationalist calling for mass deportations will almost certainly be labeled a fascist in today's climate, even if his stance is rooted in sovereignty rather than authoritarian ideology. So then I went in to ask it about, well, what would happen if the laws were changed, right? Like if mass immigration was allowed and then the laws were changed, the nationalists would then be like, well, the laws have changed, so we need to change those laws back in order to properly continue with what we're doing. But then they would be labeled a fascist again, because then they would be said to be going against the law. It's like, but the law was changed, right? Like if, for example, if there was a country that let in millions and millions and millions of people and then gave them all amnesty, well, now they are technically all legally there. But the nationalists would say, well, that's not correct. That's not ethical. That's not right. That isn't correct. Those people need to be removed because they came in illegally and then they were just granted by the government legal status. But then those people would be framed as a fascist, even though it is just a simple nationalistic perspective. So the reason I'm talking about all of this is because whenever it comes to other countries besides Europe and the United States, maintaining a very basic, normal, nationalistic perspective of wanting self-preservation, of wanting your citizens to be protected. And obviously, these types of situations are not everybody. They're not even the majority of people coming across the border. But if the way that I look at it is, in the country, whatever country you're living in, is crime increasing throughout time or is it decreasing throughout time? Because you want to live in a country where crime is decreasing, not increasing. That seems like what everybody would want. So if crime is increasing, you need to look at the reasons for why is crime increasing. Are there reasons for it? Of course there are reasons for it. Now, whenever it comes to a situation like this, obviously this girl would be alive if this man had been deported 3 years ago, obviously. So people then point to that and say that is the issue. And whenever you look at many of the countries that have received quote unquote mass immigration, they tend, I don't know if I've seen, like I've looked at a lot of the stats and I don't know if I've seen any of the countries where they've received mass immigration where the crime rates have gone down. So what's interesting about this is that it seems like it's just white people that are not allowed to express this idea of self-preservation. Whenever it comes to the way it's framed in the public narrative, it's that the white person is the oppressor, the eternal oppressor, and everybody else is oppressed, and that the white person is the majority, and that everybody else is the minority. But the problem with that is on a global scale, white people are not the majority. They are, in fact, a minority. Now, it depends on whose numbers you, well, we'll go there in a second, take for this. But what is the population of people with European descent? So this one says 1.3. Now, depending on who you look at, you see ranges between 6% and 16%. So it's a huge variation in the percentage of basically white people on the planet. Some people say 16, some people say 6. So if we just take the number in the middle, say 12, and we look at other groups of people, let's just say the Chinese, it's just a single country. What is the percent of the world of Chinese in the world population? 17 to 18%. So China itself is supposed to have like 1.6 billion people, I think. Is that right? What is the population of China? What is the population of China? 1.49 billion people. So 1.49 divided by 8.2, I think is what they say, is about 18%. And if you go through this, India is also the same, 1.45. So if we take only India and China, you say, well, 12% and 18%, that's not that big a difference. But it's actually a 50% difference, right? 12, half of 12 is 6. So it's a 50% increase in population. And the thing is the white population increasing or decreasing? Yes, the white population, let's do in the world. White demographics decline has been statistically observed by academics in relation to countries which conduct national census, including white racial or ethnic categories. So the way that it's framed is that white people aren't allowed to have nationalistic perspectives, because if they are fascist racists. But we already went through that nationalism, the perspective, is a natural, normal perspective that every nation needs to have in order to exist. So the reason that the white people in white countries are told not to self-determine, not to have this self-preservation instinct, is because they are the oppressor, that everybody else is oppressed, that they are oppressing the minorities. But if the white people are a minority on the planet, which they are, they have 75% the population of just the Chinese country, and we're talking all the white people in the world have 75% of the people of the single country of China or the single country of India, then, and they're decreasing versus, is India's population growing or decreasing? It's growing. I think China's population is decreasing, actually. Yeah, China's is decreasing. But India's is growing. But if white people are already a minority of the world's population, and their populations are decreasing, and if they express a nationalistic sentiment, a normal self-preserving sentiment, if all of those things are true, then that would indicate that there is explicit racism against white people. Because if you simply express the desire to self-preserve and you get labeled a fascist, a racist fascist, you get shut down in the conversation. It goes back to what Charlie Kirk was saying, where, which one was it? Oh, that's the wrong page. About the Irania situation. If she says all oppressed people have a right to violence, that's an insane statement to say. She believes they are oppressed by white people. So that means they have a right to violence against white people. But white people, majority of the population in America, but in the world, have a significantly lower number of population than black people in general. So if you're using her logic, like she says that white people were oppressive throughout history, but white people's population is declining and black is increasing, and they're already a greater population. So if we're talking about minorities, majorities, like it's normally framed, she's going at a minority, saying that it is acceptable to have violence against a world minority.
Have a right to violence. All oppressed people have a right to violence. And I'm going to tell you something. It's like the right to pee. You got to have the right place. You got to have the right time. You got to have the appropriate situation. And I'm absolutely convinced that this is it.
And so if those things are also true about this stabbing, which Charlie pointed out, that he said, the stabber said, "I got that white girl. She called me an N-word." Then arguably on a world scale, that would be a crime against a minority. But it's not framed that way. It's never framed that way. Ever. What's somebody saying in the chat? Where in America is an example of a Caucasian person being oppressed? Well, how about the concept of DEI hiring in H-1B visas? If you're hiring somebody purely because they're not white, that would be oppressive to white people, because you're not hiring based on merit. And if you are hiring outside of the country so that you don't have to pay Americans a fair wage, because that's like what Elon Musk was all about with the H-1B visas, so that Silicon Valley can hire a bunch of Indian IT workers and stuff for their tech companies. That's literally what they want. Trump is bringing in like 500 million Chinese people. If they're getting jobs that Americans would otherwise get, that would be oppressive to the white people within the society, because they're not getting a job that they otherwise would have got. That would be an example of Caucasians being oppressed. Steve. Okay, what else did I have here? Okay, so the question of oppression, the oppressor versus the oppressed, a narrative, a framing of the conversation that I don't actually even agree with. Because I don't believe that's how the world works. I don't believe it's oppressor versus oppressed. I think it's a bunch of people living, existing, trying to live on the planet and stay alive, basically. Have people taken advantage of people throughout history? Of course they have. But here's another example. Was it this one? So Poland, right? So Poland was, this is from a while ago. This is from 2001. But I don't know if you remember this, but Belarus sent a whole bunch of people to the Polish border, refugees from wherever. And Poland said, we don't want them. Our borders are closed. We're not taking them. But Belarus kept sending more and more of these refugees to Poland, to the border, and that created a type of border wall. Now, how is it acceptable if a country has the right to self-determination? They should have the right to close their borders at any time in history, right? But if that is the case, they self-determining means you have autonomy, sovereignty over your country. You should at any time be able to close your doors. If you say, no, we're not taking anybody, don't send us anymore, and they keep sending more and more people to the border so that you have to now militarize your border to enforce the boundary you just set up, that you say, no, for right now, we're not taking anybody at all. That would be a form of an attack, would it not? Like, that to me logically seems like an attack. Like, if I'm in my house and there are people at my door and I say, no, you cannot come inside, and I close my door, if they then try to get inside, that's breaking and entering, right? Like, that's literally a crime. Why is it not put the same towards a country whenever they exhibit those same goals? Why was Poland in this situation years ago said to be like one of the most racist countries ever, and that they were doing it because they were racist? Why can they not just say, we don't want to take people, we want to have our own country, our own self-preserving country? Where is it? Okay, so the government continues to stand by, this is, back in 2021, but if you remember it at the time, you remember the narrative that was being pushed alongside of this. The government continues to stand by its decision to declare the state of emergency along the border to prevent migrants from crossing into Poland. We're not talking about refugees, but about mass migration. People who cross the border are not in danger in Belarus. They were brought in by the Lukashenko regime and are being used as weapons for political reason, Kamansky said during Monday's press conference. So that's the Polish man. He said that if they're in Belarus, they're not in danger. They're not fleeing a war zone. So I don't know if it's the Geneva Convention or whatever. He's like, we don't need to take them. They're fine there. We want to have our own country. Then he said, he then said after the meeting, Johannesson, that Poland grants international protection to peoples whose life and health are at risk, as exemplified by the assistance provided to Belarusians persecuted by Lukashenko's regime in the evacuation of around 1,300 refugees from Afghanistan. Now, if you don't know about the Lukashenko regime, I don't know too much about it, but if we look up who Lukashenko is, Alexander Grigorovich Lukashenko is a Belarusian politician who has been the first and only president of Belarus since the official establishment in 1994, making him the current longest-serving European leader. He's a dictator. He's literally a dictator, right? Like, if he's been in office for 31 years, he's the longest-serving European leader. Wouldn't that constitute him as a dictator? Isn't that what they say about Putin, that Putin's a dictator? Because hasn't Putin been in office about the same amount of time? How long has Putin been president? Putin's been president for less time. So he's been president for longer than Putin. If Putin's a dictator, this guy's definitely a dictator. And also, before embarking on his political career, Lukashenko worked as a director of State Farm and served in both the Soviet border troops and the Soviet army. And during the dissolution of the Soviet Union, he assumed a position of the head of the interim anti-corruption committee of the Council of Belarus. He won presidency in the country's inaugural presidential election after the adoption of a new constitution. He opposed economic shock therapy. I'm not going to get into all of that, but he was a Soviet troop that is now the president of Belarus and has been president for over 30 years and was sending a bunch of refugees to Poland after Poland said, we're not taking them. They're not in danger. We're not taking them. And what happened was, in this whole situation, at least 5 people have died in the border zone where a state of emergency has been declared, closing a 3-kilometer wide border strip to any outsiders, including the media. Poland is also refusing to turn to the EU's Frontex border agency, which is based in Warsaw, for help, despite growing pressures from Brussels too. So I guess the question is, and I don't know technically the answer to this because I don't know what specifically happened at that border, but if it is the case that the Polish said, so on Thursday, Amnesty International accused the Polish government of illegally turning back people to Belarus. The human rights organization used satellite tracking to follow the path of 32 people who it said were on the Polish side of the border on August 18th, but a day later were back in Belarus. Why? The question is, why is it illegal to turn people back from where they're coming from? Outside of people literally fleeing a war zone, isn't it up to the country whether or not they will allow people in and out? Isn't that like their choice? You don't actually, like me, I don't have the right to go into any country I want, right? Like, it's as long as their policies allow it. We saw that during 2020. Every country shut down its borders and said nobody's allowed in or out. It's a matter of national security. So if that's the case, you don't have a right to travel. Like, I don't know that I necessarily even believe in rights as a concept, because a right is enforced by the government, not anything else. Like, who else would enforce it if it wasn't the government? So yeah, I mean, the government gives you rights and you should have rights, but I'm saying I don't think they intrinsically exist, because how could they if they're because if the government doesn't enforce them, then you don't have them. So the Polish, he says, we're not talking about refugees, but about mass migration. People who cross the border are not in danger. So there's that word, mass migration, or other people say mass deportation. Those are words that are used nationalistically that get slurred into being called fascists. And so the question I'm proposing with Poland is, what about this situation is not like normal nationalistic self-preserving behavior from how they see it, right? Like, if you view it as mass immigration and you see the people in the country and they're safe, they're not actively leaving a war zone, from their perspective, wouldn't that be a form of invasion, especially if after they said, no, we don't want to take any more refugees, any more immigrants, that they kept sending them and kept sending them, so then they had to fortify their border. So then it looks really bad, because now you've got the military on the border and you have to forcibly stop people from coming over. But if those people are trying to enter the country illegally, how else do you stop that besides that? It's an honest question. How else do you stop that? You said, I think you meant one person. What about, I don't know, who am I thinking about? I've read stuff about people in Silicon Valley who they lose their jobs because they literally have to train their replacement, and the replacement is a foreigner. Let me see if I can even find that. Silicon Valley training training own replacement. Let's see. Oh, come on. I don't have a sub to them. What is this? The Verge? The replacements. The Verge. The H-1B visa system has been broken for decades. Now workers want Trump to fix it. Did my sound go out again? Craig D'Angelo thought he was on a path to an easy retirement. A veteran of the tech industry, D'Angelo got his start at COBOL programmer in the 70s. Over the next 4 decades, he learned dozens of new programming languages and kept up with the evolution of the sector from mainframe computers to PCs. From the early days of the web to the advent of cloud computing, he held a position as a senior advisor to the CTO, a major health... Okay, well, let's get to the point. He lived in an office in Berlin, Connecticut, made 6-figure salary, and was working towards a comfortable pension. And then, in October, he and his fellow staffers were called into an all-hands meeting with the company's chief information officer. She announced that they were going to be outsource all of IT infrastructure and development to 2 companies, Infosys and Tata. Temporary workers in the U.S. on H-1B visas would arrive. The Eversource employees would need to train their own replacements. She was saying that they needed to bring over global workers. Global workers were more adaptable and can adapt to a change a lot faster than Americans can. Left unsaid. I guess the name is Left. Oh no, Left unsaid was the new workers would reportedly be getting less than half the salary of those they were replacing, and a few, if any, health and retirement benefits. So, to Steve, would that be considered oppression against a white person, losing your job to literally a foreigner getting paid half? A job that you've had for 4 decades. As an honest question, do you consider that oppression? Because that doesn't seem fair. And what is considered oppression then in your view, if that is not a form? I'm not saying it's the ultimate form, but that seems to be a form. What was I talking about before that? What else do I got? Oh, so this concept of oppressor versus oppressed, where does it come from? It comes from Marxism. In the Frankfurt School, so after World War II is when fascism became ultimately demonized because of what happened in the war. And that's whenever, the saying, never again, came into place. And that's when fascism was demonized to living hell, right? If you want to call somebody the worst person on earth, you call them a fascist, or you call them the leader of Germany. That is the insult that you're supposed to say, or that is commonly used. Not necessarily that you're supposed to say it, but it's commonly used. So after the World War, the Frankfurt School is a school of thought in sociology and critical theory. It is associated with the Institution of Social Research, founded in 1923, University of Frankfurt, Maine. Formed during the Weimar Republic, so that's Germany. During the European interwar period, the first generation of Frankfurt schools was composed of intellectuals, academics, and political dissidents dissatisfied with the socioeconomic systems of the 1930s, namely capitalism, fascism, and communism. Significant figures associated with the school are these guys: Max Horkheimer, Theodor Adorno, Walter Benjamin, Erich Fromm, William Reich, Herbert Marcuse, and Jürgen Habermas. So they proposed social theory, proposed that existing social theory was unable to explain turbulent political factionalism and reactionary politics, such as Nazism, of 20th century liberal capitalist societies. Also critical of Marxism-Leninism as a philosophically inflexible system of social organization, the school's critical theory resource sought alternative paths to social development. So this is kind of the birth of the demonizing of fascism. And I'm not promoting fascism. I'm just saying that if you're promote nationalistic tendencies and you get labeled a fascist, it then prevents self-preservation instincts, and you get told that you're a bad person for wanting to self-preserve, when self-preservation, of course, is the fundamental of every person on the planet. So this is a school of thought and a group of people that worked in universities to push these ideas that fascism is the worst thing ever and should never be allowed to happen again. Now, who are some of these people? Well, you have Theodor Adorno. We're going to look through a few of these, and then we're probably going to end the stream kind of soon. He was a leading member. Wow. He was a leading member of the Frankfurt School of Critical Theory, whose work has commonly come to be associated with thinkers such as Ernest Bloch, Walter Benjamin, the same guys that we've mentioned before, from whom the works of Freud, Karl Marx, and G.W.F. Hegel were essential to the critique of modern society. As a critic of both fascism and what he called cultural industry, his writings such as The Dialectic of Enlightenment and Negative Dialectic strongly influenced the European New Left. So, the foundation of both. These schools, they pushed views. Where does it talk about fatal? Upon his return to Frankfurt, is that what I'm looking for? His writings intervening. Oh, here we go. As a writer of polemics in the tradition of Friedrich Nietzsche and Karl Kraus, so a polemic is a contentious rhetoric intended to support a specific position. So basically, it's like a critique of something, an argument to undermine the opposing position. So so you write it in a way that it's an argument, but you're kind of undermining. It's kind of like poisoning the well, what they say, where you completely discredit a position before, so that your position looks more valid. That's kind of what a polemic is. It's a bit different, but so Adorno delivered scathing critiques of contemporary Western culture. Adorno's posthumously, I don't actually know what that word is. Look up. Oh, after the death of the originator. Oh, so his book got published after he was dead. His lifelong commitment to modern art, attempt to revoke fatal separatism of feeling and understanding long demanded by history of philosophy, explore the privileged aesthetics according to the content over the form, and contemplation over immersion. And he was nominated for a 1965 Nobel Prize in Literature. Now, contemporary Western culture is that of what the Western culture came from, right? Like, if you like Western culture, if you were a person that enjoyed and embraced your culture at the time, he was writing scathing critiques of your culture. You might not have liked Western culture, contemporary Western culture, but for the people that do, he was then criticizing their culture. And some people would say undermining it. And then it says that his lifelong commitment to modern art. Now, I don't know exactly what modern art was like back in 1960, the 1960s, but now modern art is garbage, and it is atrocious in comparison to the old statue, like let's see, the net statue. Oh, come on. Net statue in Italy. This statue is absolutely insane. This is a single piece of marble. Let me move my head here. No, Steve, I didn't say I'm mad at the people taking the job. I asked if that was a form of oppression. You say be mad at the legend. It's not a question of whether or not I'm mad or not mad. The question is whether or not that is a form of oppression. So this is in Italy. It's in a church in Italy, and this is one of those statues that I look at and I go, how is that even humanly possible? Because it's a single piece of marble, and not one of those pieces of nets chipped or broke, and he did the knots and everything on every single piece. It's absolutely incredible. Like, look at the detail on that. So in my opinion, this is significantly better than anything in modern art. Or what is that? What's the name of it? English statue in the Vatican. What's it called? What's the name of this one? Yeah, Lagoon. Where is it? Lagoon Laocoon. This to me is maybe the greatest statue I've ever seen in person. Absolutely amazing. So Adorno had a commitment to modern art, not this type of art, and he was heavily scathing critiques of contemporary Western culture. And the pushing of Marx, of course, Marxism is all framed as oppressor versus oppressed. And these are people that are in the universities, Columbia University. Now, we're going to look at a few people that have said some pretty crazy things. And I hope by you reading their words, you tell me what you think. So this is Susan Sontag. She's a writer and a critic. Here it says, one of the most influential critics of her generation. And she was born 1933 to 2004. One of the most influential critics of her generation. So if you're an influential in your generation, that means things have changed because of your writings. So what are things that she wrote, Susan Sontag? Well, if we scroll down here on her criticisms, she wrote that white civilization is a cancer. This is Sontag. This is her writing. If America is the culmination of Western white civilization, as everyone from the left and right declares, then there must be something terribly wrong with Western white civilization. That's what Susan Sontag wrote. This is a painful truth. Few of us want to go that far. The truth is that Mozart, Pascal, Boolean algebra, Shakespeare, parliamentary government, Baroque churches, Newton, the emancipation of women, Kant, Marx, Balanchine ballets, et al. Don't redeem what this particular civilization has wrought upon the world. This is Susan Sontag's words. The white race is a cancer of human history. It is the white race and it alone, its ideologies and inventions, which eradicates autonomous civilizations wherever it spreads. Again, this is this is not my words, it's Susan Sontag, which has upset the ecological balance of the planet, which now threatens the very existence of life itself. That seems to be a horrible message to be spreading. Yes or no? Because that seems pretty horrible. And if she was one of the most influential critics of her generation, if ideas like that were being spread in the universities, well, she was an essayist, a novelist, and a filmmaker, but one of the most influential critics of her generation. But I believe this guy, well, he graduated from Harvard School of Education, but he worked at Massachusetts College of Art and Harvard University. Noel Ignatieff, an American author and historian, was best known for his controversial theories on race, for which his call to abolish whiteness. That's what he said. Now, his academic career, Ignatieff set up Marxist discussion groups in the early 1980s. In 1985, Ignatieff was accepted to the Harvard Graduate School of Education without an undergraduate degree. After earning his master's degree, he joined the Harvard faculty as a lecturer and worked towards a doctorate in U.S. history. He was a graduate student of Harvard, blah, blah, blah. He taught courses there at Harvard before moving to Massachusetts College of Art. His academic work was linked to his call to abolish the white race, a controversial slogan whose meaning is not always agreed upon by those who debate his work. This is what Ignatieff was saying, and he was literally a professor in American universities, and he was setting up Marxism. So if there are messages like that being taught to young people, then what is the consequence of that? If it is the case that when white people express nationalistic ideas, simple self-preservation ideas, and get labeled and discredited as fascists, if that is the case, and it is the case that things like oppression versus the oppressor versus the oppressed, the oppressor versus the oppressed has been taught to many different people, and if it is true that white people are always framed as, it's not even that they're framed as the majority, it's there's white people and there's minorities. That seems to be how it's framed. If all of those things are true, then what is the consequence of that? Is that not racism against white people? If there have been messages taught to young people to, quote, abolish the white race, if they are set up as the oppressors and they are not allowed the ability to self-determine and have basic survival premises without being called racist and fascist, how is that not racism against white people? Steve, why am I reading the way through Wikipedia? Because I'm reading you what he said. What is crunchy? See, why am I alt-right? What did I say that is alt-right? What did I, like, in the argument that I just made, what did I say that is inaccurate or false or not logical? Where does the logic not follow? Because it's not just those people. There are a whole, like, multiple different people pushing similar narratives, and the whole framing of the oppressed versus the oppressor is part of the issue. Because if we go back to what we were talking about in the very beginning with how do you say her name again? Irnia. I'm getting hungry. So the argument that Kirk was making was that if it was reversed, that there would be massive outcry, types of things like the Black Lives Matter protests, the hands up, don't shoot, all that types of stuff. The raising money for Carmelo Anthony, a literal murderer, raising money and giving money to him. If it was in reverse, that type of behavior seems to be acceptable. But if people seem outraged that she was killed and the killer said, "I got that white girl, she called me an N-word," even though the video shows her with her back to him on her phone, if people get outraged about that, the guys like who is that? Who is this guy again? What's his name? Van Jones says that that's completely unfounded, and he says that white people have a virus in their brain that can activate in an instant. How are those things not racism against white people? How? Steve, you're not answering any of my questions. You're just asking more questions. What else did I have on the list here? Oh, because what do we look at? Who started Black Lives Matter? Because we saw before that lady said that oppressed people have a right to violence, which I do not agree with. Even if I were to think that white people are the oppressed, which, like I said, I don't believe in that framing. I don't believe in oppressed versus oppressor. I would not agree with that statement, that the oppressed have a right to violence. I think that's a crazy statement. Let's look up these people. Opal Tometi. My point is a question. How are those things not racism against white people? How is it not? Why is it that if white countries want to self-preserve, why is it labeled fascism? That's my question. Why is it that these things are acceptable if they happen to white countries? But so, for example, the whole concept of diversity, why is that not also pushed on India, on China, on all of these other countries? Why? That's my question. Okay, so we're going to look into these three people because what I've heard about Black Lives Matter, I haven't actually looked myself. So we're going to find out if what I heard was true or not, was that these people were Marxists. But I don't know if that's true. Alicia Garza is the American civil rights activist, co-founder of Black Lives Matter. Let's see if we can find this. Career. Bay Area Training Program, Unity. I don't know if I'm gonna even be able to find this without like super long amounts of reading. What is the mission of Black Lives Matter? Because what I've been told, wow, right there. The Black Lives Matter movement is a core mission is to eradicate white supremacy, fight against systemic racism and police brutality targeting black communities. But the thing is, that term, white supremacy, the fascists or people expressing common nationalistic beliefs that people of most nations believe, if they get labeled as fascists, a lot of times they also get called white supremacists because they go, well, you don't want to let in illegal immigrants. That's because you're racist. You must be a white supremacist. So it's not that I'm saying eradicating white supremacy as a concept itself is a bad concept. I'm saying that the way the term used is like the word fascist, that it gets thrown at people as a slur. Not that I don't promote whites. I don't believe in whites. I don't believe in supremacy. Fight against systemic racism, police brutality, targeting black communities. Where is their website? Because I also heard, and again, I haven't looked into it explicitly, but that the creators of it embezzled a bunch of money, or that they were entangled in lawsuits or something. I can't remember. Black Lives Matter imagines a world where black people across the diaspora thrive, experience joy, and are not defined by their struggles. In pursuing liberation, we envision a future fully divested from police prisons and all punishment paradigms, which invest in justice, joy, and culture. That's cool, but what does fully divested from police mean? Because I understand fully divested from prisons. Like, yeah, you don't want to be going to prison, but like the police are what keep the system. I don't know what that means. Black Lives Matter is working inside and outside of the system to heal the past, reimagine the present, and invest in the future of Black lives through policy change, investments. Yeah, that's fine. But I could be wrong, but I thought I heard or read somewhere that something about it had to do with Marxism. And maybe it's just the fact that things are pretty much always framed as oppressed versus the oppressor, because that is like a Marxist paradigm. Steve, that's the show. The show is called Dead Reckoning. It's looking into information and figuring out what is and what isn't true. Well, Steve, you haven't answered any of my questions. I asked you direct questions, and you just spam questions instead of addressing what I said. I asked if those things were racist, because what I found in talking to people is there are lots of people that actually believe that it's not actually possible to be racist against white people. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. Because like I said, on a global scale, if white people are a minority and are declining, then why is it that everybody else gets the privilege of self-determination, the privilege of self-preservation, but if white people do it, then it's considered fascism or racism or anything like that? That seems to be racism against whites. And what happens is when you call reasonable people, like reasonable nationalists that just want safety and security within their own country and just want the things that every nation throughout the world like has normally, basic border protections, basic law and order, that types of stuff. if those moderate types of people get labeled and silenced as fascists, what happens within the narrative, the cultural narrative, the long-term narrative, is that the conversation inevitably gets more extreme because it has to, because the moderate voices that are just asking for self-preservation, they get quieted. So now the guys that are the loudest and the most extreme, their voices get amplified because the moderate is being silenced. And then it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if the idea is that we don't ever want fascism to happen again, then we should be discussing things with the people that are kind of in that direction, but not even remotely there, right? If they say that fascism is ultra nationalism, but nationalism is acceptable and normal among nations, then shouldn't it be that those types of people are not discredited and slurred into being called fascist and racist and supremacist, all those words that are used? Shouldn't it be more of an open conversation instead of just silencing them? Because from their point of view, if they believe that they're holding simple self-preserving instincts and then get told that they're not allowed to hold those views without, like, if you hold those views that you're a bad person, they're eventually going to get backed into a corner, either mentally, literally, metaphorically, whatever you want to call it, to where they'll just go, like, I don't actually give a fuck what you call me, because the person now feels that they're being told that they don't have a right to exist. That's kind of my point. That's what seems to be happening in some white cultures. And I haven't heard an argument against it. That's the point. Where is the argument against it? Okay. I don't know if I have anything else on my list to talk about. I'm getting kind of tired. This was like how long I've been live for? What, 3 hours, 3.5 hours? That's a pretty good live stream. Okay, well, let me check my notes here. I think that is where I was going. Kind of long roundabout discussion, and the question stands: if people, like in Germany, for example, get outraged at a murder like Liana K, or if Americans were to get outraged at what happened at Irania, in the same way that or even Austin Metcalf with Carmelo, if the whites of Germany and in America were to react in the way that historically the African Americans, the blacks, have reacted to things like Michael Brown, who, what actually happened is a topic of debate, but all of the bullet holes in his body were in the front of his body, not his back. But the narrative we were sold in the beginning was he got shot in the back. But that's apparently not true. If, in regards to these types of situations, the white people were to react at the same amplitude as the way as hands up, don't shoot, things like that, how would that be viewed politically? Would it be viewed socially and politically the same way as the things like Hands Up and Don't Shoot, Black Lives Matter, this stuff with George Floyd and whatnot, would it be viewed as a righteous thing that is happening, that they are standing up for their peoples? Or would those people that are upset that 2 Ukrainian girls were senselessly murdered by, in America, a black man that said, I got that white girl, and in Germany, a drunk Iraqi man that pushed her in front of a train, if people were to get outraged about those things, how would it be viewed? Because it seems like that would be a very, I understand they're Ukrainian, but a type of nationalistic response for Germany. If you have a guy that the article literally says he should have been deported 2 years previously, and it goes on to make a crime, or the Irania, he was 14 times offending. The question is, how would it be perceived? And is that fair? Is that same standard the same across all races and nations? Or is it a specific nation? Is it white people that are not allowed to react in that self-preserving way? That's the question. Anyway, I think that's it. I'm getting kind of tired. I've been going on for a while. I need to eat some food, and I feel like I'm kind of rambling now. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. Like I said in the beginning, it was going to be controversial topics, and it's very clear that it's controversial. I mean, it's crazy just talking about this stuff as a white guy. You get labeled things just for trying to have a conversation about it. But it is what it is, and that's the world that we live in. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great week. This was episode 4 of Dead Reckoning. I don't know exactly what we'll be talking about next time. I don't know exactly when I'll be going live again, because I got other things I'm doing. I'm working on a bunch of videos, editing a bunch of videos, getting things together to start traveling again, and all that kind of stuff. But I hope you guys have a good week, a good life, and much love. Nothing but love towards you guys, and have a great rest of your evening.